when for you was the first time you can recall having a crush on a boy?
I mean, this is the most honest answer that I could give, and this is how complex abuse is. But it was the guy that abused me. Because at that age, I didn't know that was abuse. I thought that was acceptance. I thought that felt like love. And
Right.
so and that was the first inclination that my mom started to have, was like I had an affinity, an attraction to this guy that wasn't normal.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of What It's Really Like with me, your host, Molly Burke. I am so excited for today's episode because we aren't with just anyone today. We are with my best friend in the whole wide world, Mr. Bradon Schwarz.
Hello, the real OGs. Remember me?
Yes.
I might have been absent for a few years, but I'm still alive. I'm still around. Still really, really living my best life. Molly is a huge presence in my life, but we don't live in
A distant
presence. It's like a lot of you might relate to this with your friends, your family. Proximity makes a big difference when it's like how often you see your friends and your family. But Molly and I, whenever we get together, it's like we haven't missed a beat.
And what's so funny is, like, we're both the shittiest texters. Like, neither of us text each other ever, but then when we do, it's like literally no time has passed at all. And we'll see each other like maybe once a year, but when we do, it's truly just like slot right back into what it's always been, which is the true mark, I think, of a best friend. So you guys think most episodes of What It's Really Like are long conversations? Girl, buckle up, because I don't know how you're going to get us to shut up. We already, like, we've been hanging out for the past couple hours. We're doing a little bestie weekend. He's staying in the guest room, and I'm really excited. But we've been, like, cutting conversations off because we're like, no, don't go there. We've got to save it for the pod for our discussion. So there's a lot we want to unpack. But I have to start this episode the same way I start every episode, which is, who is Bradon Schwarz, for those who don't know the lore of our friendship?
Oh, God. I look myself in the mirror every morning and I ask myself that same question. Bradon Schwarz is now Bradon Barman Schwarz. He got married 2 years ago to the love of his life. And Bradon is figuring it out one day at a time, one step at a time. Grew up half of my life pretending to be a certain person. And about 15 years ago, came out and had a difficult time doing that, as a lot of people do. And who I am today is no longer that person. I'm no longer stuck in that phase. And I've kind of blossomed into a career and relationships and identity that I just fully own. You've seen all the different phases of kind of like a pendulum swinging one way or the other, but hard to answer that question, who is Bradon, except for Bradon is happy. Bradon's in love with both his husband, himself, and his family, which wasn't always there for him. Bradon's at peace.
Oh, I love that so much. And we were reminiscing, like, when you came over earlier today, that our 10-year anniversary is coming up. Our 10-year bestie anniversary is coming up.
That's insane. It's June or July?
I think end of June.
Yeah, 10 years. I don't know what you remember, like, when we first met. I remember vivid. Yeah.
Vivid. It's all like, we're gonna get
Is
into
it the hike?
it.
The hike? Yeah,
the hike. Oh, that was our, like, moment.
The bonding. Yeah.
Yes, that hike was our moment.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into it. But I think before we talk about, like, that period of your life when I entered and changed your world, which was, like, such a huge pivot point in your life, I want to talk about the before. So I think that one reason I wanted to have this conversation with you on the pod is your story is, I think, going to be relatable for a lot of my followers, which was, as you said, like, being raised, having to pretend to be somebody you weren't because you were raised in a very religious world and community, and then realizing that you, under the principles of that teaching, were a sinner because you liked men, and having to go through that journey of, like, pretending to be somebody you knew you weren't to make all the people around you happy, to finally figuring out how to own who you were, even if it made other people unhappy, but to center your own happiness in that. Yeah. So I want to get into all of that, but I think the best place to start is at the beginning. So what was your childhood like?
You just hit the nail on the head. You just said it right there. That was my story. No, childhood, you know, it's hard to complain about my childhood, honestly, because like I think when you look at it through the lens of a young queer kid that didn't know how to express himself or be who he was, that kid really struggled. But through the lens of a kid that was loved by his parents and loved by his community and had safety and a roof over his head, like I had an incredible like place to be brought into this world. And I kind of just like signed up for whatever was there, like if my parents went to church, like let me do it. Like whatever they believed, I believed. Whatever they thought, I kind of echoed it. And loved my family and still do to that extent. Like I think I still have like a lot of nostalgia for the good of that childhood, even though like as we'll kind of get in this conversation, it wasn't all good in those years. But how do I look at it now? I mean, it was an incredible childhood. Like I had a dad that worked, like a lot of our dads works too much, but did it because he wanted us to have all of this time together as a family. And I know it sounds kind of like contradictory, but he's self-employed. So he felt like the more that he could commit to his job, the more we'd be able to build up this family dynamic that was incredible. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have like this normal school life where I went to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my teacher was my mom, my only classmate and bully, and everybody was my sister. And so you could kind of imagine like it's this very like tight knit, almost incestuous kind of like family unit, and it was incredible. It was magical, like it made my family be like the biggest priority in my life. And as you can
Mm.
imagine, it made it that much harder. Even though that foundation is incredible, the moment that you get to a place in life where you no longer fit in with that childhood upbringing, you have this choice to either try to force yourself into that mold that never quite was fit for you, or to try to bring those people up with you to where you're at now. So it went from being this beautiful, incredibly tight-knit family to then through the teenage years and through my coming out, that foundation, we fell back to it at some point. Like that closeness, we are still close till this day. And throughout all of the struggles, like that kind of childhood upbringing helped us. But it also was like the first thing that I lost when I came out was that sense of safety and that sense of family and that childhood innocence that I had. It was incredible. But then when I came out and my parents struggled to kind of come to terms with it, it felt like I lost all of that. So it's kind of wrapped into one. It was all beautiful. And it was the thing that I
Beautiful
had
and
to risk.
painful.
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
step away from that. I had to risk losing it. And yeah, but obviously childhood's many years and many things. And there was good and bad. I don't know how much of the other stuff you want to get into about like the like abuse and that kind of stuff. I'm more than willing to talk about it, but yeah, don't necessarily have to unless you want to like go there.
I mean, I'm happy to go wherever you feel safe and comfortable going,
Yeah.
and you can change your mind at any time. I think the entire idea behind this podcast is number one, to create bridges.
Mm.
Like, I think right now we live in a society that is so segmented. And I think in part because of social media, we immediately see our differences before we see our similarities.
Mm.
And that is creating a world that is divided. And I'm really trying to have conversations that bridges those gaps and reminds us of our similarities and helps us feel seen and feel heard and understood and builds more compassion and empathy. And for me, I'm really trying not to ask my guests to do anything that I'm unwilling to do.
Mm.
I think that what I've seen in my career of being honest and being vulnerable is seeing, yes, how hard it is to do that, but overwhelmingly the benefit of doing it. Like the community that it does build around you and the way it does make people feel more seen and heard and more connected is like it's been so rewarding for me. But I've also been on the receiving end of a lot of interviews, right? Like I've done press for decades now. And so often what I experience is a white, cis, straight, non-disabled,
Yep.
non-immigrant,
Yeah.
like person coming in and asking me questions more so from a place of like tragedy tourism than from a place of wanting to truly, genuinely connect and understand. And I never want my guests to feel like I'm here to exploit your trauma, but rather I'm here to connect. And, you know, in a conversation I had on the podcast recently with the guest Chan Plant, who had a lot of medical trauma and lost an eye. And in that conversation, you know, she's talking about losing an eye. And I said, I can relate to like XYZ feeling because, and then I started talking about a push-up bra. And like, I understood that like objectively, that's like a ridiculous connection to make. But my point in making those connections in these conversations, and I do want this to be more of a conversation than interviews, but like in these conversations, my point of drawing those connections is to say to people, have I ever lost my eye? No. But can I listen to Chan and find a way to empathize with her experience? Yes. And as silly as it might sound, the way I could relate to that is thinking about like my own insecurity around the size of my chest and around trying to make it something it wasn't, the way she feels like she's trying to make her eye something it isn't if she wears a realistic looking prosthetic. So those experiences are incredibly different, but can we find that bridge? And that's really what these conversations are about. So with every guest, it's, to me, like I'm willing to go into whatever corners of your life you're willing to go into. And I want you to always feel like it's a safe space to say no. Because I know what it's like sometimes to be asked a question and feel like I have to answer because I'm being asked under the lights. And I don't want guests to feel like that. So like wherever you want to go, I'm willing to go. And vice versa.
I appreciate everything that not only you just said, but like what you're doing through this podcast, because like the world needs more empathy. The world needs to see more of themselves in other people's journeys. You know, we can't just stop ignoring other people's experiences just because we don't know what it's like. And sometimes it takes sitting down and listening or asking questions. And you know me, you know this stuff. I've been an open book as a friend. And I want encourage people that if they have gone through anything similar to either me or your experience, like to own that experience, to own that story. And if you're willing to share it with people, because you do not know who you might connect with in a sort of a sympathetic sort of way, somebody that has walked a very similar parallel path to you, or somebody like Molly and I, who if you were to put on paper, what do we have in common? Is not necessarily a whole lot, but if you spend any time with us, you'll realize we're like two peas in a pod, in part because of our passions for each other's communities in some ironic crisscross sort of way. Molly's always been really passionate for queer people and accepting and showing love into people that have been mistreated, in part because you understand what that's like. And those of you who know who I am or who my family is, you might know that we actually work with blind and visually impaired people, and that's how we got to know Molly. So Molly's not my only blind friend. She's one of the more important ones, but it's
one of I met Ross Minor through Bradon and his family. So you have such an interesting experience in that you're like this sighted person who has been around more blind people than like most blind people. Like you were raised around blind people your entire life. And many times in your life have been like the minority in the room of blind people.
Most of the time.
So it's really interesting, and we'll get into all of it. But I think to like center us back to where things began. I didn't grow up particularly religious. Like I'm Irish, so we're all Catholic. It's how we go.
It's a special kind of Catholic.
It's just a specific kind of Catholic. And like I did like grow up going on to church like on and off, and I did my communion and I did my confirmation, I was baptized, all the things. But I identify, like I told my parents when I went blind at 14, which is when I was supposed to make my confirmation, I was like, I'm Buddhist. I was like completely like walked away. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not confirming, because to me I was in this place where I was like, how can God do this to somebody he loves?
Totally.
Like I didn't understand how God could put me through so much pain at such a young age. And I really like walked away, and my family, my immediate family, my parents were like very supportive of that and understanding of that journey for me. all that to say, I identify as very spiritual. Like
Mhm.
prayer is a part of my life. I do believe in a higher power. I have not associated myself with organized religion for the majority of my life. So I'm going to ask some stupid questions when it comes to religion because I don't necessarily come from the background. But what like sector of Christianity were you raised?
Yeah, and some of the answers that I'll give you might sound very cultish, because I was raised in the bubble,
It's a
and
little
I
cultish.
swear I'm not there anymore though. But yeah, I was raised Seventh-day Adventist or Seventh-day Adventist, depending on the dialect you come from, I guess. But shorthand Adventist SDA, um, and it for the most part was an incredible as far as organized religions go. None of them are probably getting a shining star in my grade book. But as far as how I felt growing up, just the community and all that kind of stuff, it was a good place. But um, yeah, I loved the journey for me growing up in this hyper isolated environment from other religions. So Seventh Day Adventism, for those of you that know, you know what I'm talking about. But for those of you that don't know, the seventh day part of the Adventists means that they believe that the seventh day is the Sabbath. So, seventh day of the week, meaning Saturday. So rather than Sabbath being on Sunday and going to church, we treat Sabbath as a Saturday, similar to Jews and Judaism. So, shorthand, this is a really kind of like not PC thing to call religion, but I always called Seventh-day Adventists Jews for Jesus because the commonality between Jews and Seventh-day Adventists is we all keep Levitical law. We keep kosher as far as clean and unclean meats. We don't eat pork. We don't eat shellfish. We keep the Sabbath or Shabbat, but we believe in Jesus. And so kind of some really like key differences that makes Adventists really like a special flavor of Christian. And what they believed so ingrained deeply in our head was that like we were right. Like we were so right that even if you were a Christian of like a different flavor, like if you were, a Baptist or a Methodist or whatever, one of the many variations that are out there, not good enough. Like
Mm.
we believe in a certain way that we're supposed to live life, and if you don't do it the Adventist way, some people believe that like that's eternal, like life or death consequences. And so yeah, it's like on one hand, oh, nostalgic, beautiful, what great people. But then you boil down to it, you're like, yep, okay, it sounds real cultish to me. So,
Well, and I remember you telling me, and this is when I like feel like I had that realization of like, oh, he was like pretty extreme. Was like growing up, you didn't even listen to music with like drums or like it was
I
like
forgot about that. Yeah.
there was like a lot of rules in your life that when you're growing up in this like controlled bubble, like you're homeschooled.
Hmm.
So it's just like you, your mom, and your sister. You're only really going outside and associating with other people who are homeschooled in the same religion.
Hmm.
You're going to church. Like truly your entire world was this controlled bubble of like down to what music you listen to, what shows you watch, what meats you eat,
Hmm.
um, what clothes you wear. What other like rules or what was that side of your childhood like? Now that you know what the rest of the world was like, watching SpongeBob and listening to Simple Plan, what was your like world like?
Oh, I could remember vividly the first CD that I ever had. And it somehow like kept in my room for most of my life. It was an NSYNC CD, and my sister got a Britney Spears
It's
CD.
so telling.
So like literally like at this time when yes, we actually had there was not a lot of music in our household, mainly because this is the CD era, so you actually had to go out and buy CDs. And so my parents could easily control what music we listened to. Why? Because we didn't have money. You couldn't go buy it. But we had a friend of my family that lived with us for a while, and she was in high school. And so her gift to the young kids of the house was music. And the music of the day was NSYNC and Britney Spears. And I was, I think, 4 or 5. So my sister's 2 years older, but that was our first introduction to like secular music was Britney Spears and NSYNC. And it was like, we are missing something, aren't we?
Mm.
Because, and even just that, like we probably just had those two CDs until we were probably like 10 or 12, somewhere in that range. But, the church that we went to was super, I use the term reverent, but that might mean nothing to people that didn't go to church. Reverence, like, it's quiet and spiritual and respectful to the Holy Spirit. It just means it's quiet and it's kind of weird.
It's not a party church.
No, it's not a party
It's
church.
not like everyone's
There's no
dancing.
clapping. There's no nothing
Yeah.
like that. Very much like you. So there's no guitars. They say that the music can't have rhythm, and I hate that, because anybody that knows me, all music has rhythm. And
I was
like,
gonna say, what does that even mean?
They don't believe in guitars because it's too rhythmical, and they would do a piano and an organ. Oh, hey, LT.
Hi, baby.
Hi, buddy.
He says, "Mom's getting excited."
Yeah. So we went from listening to the organ and piano, and anytime that they would finish like singing, it's called a hymnal. Like most churches have some sort of like traditional hymnal book, but that's what we sang from. Every song that we had was from the hymnal, and you couldn't clap afterwards, because if you clapped, you were giving praise to the performer, who was really up there praising. So what you had to do rather than clap was, whenever somebody finished their song, you'd do a hearty amen or hallelujah or something like that. And yeah, just who came up with these rules? I don't know, but I fell into that environment, and I was told that that is true and that is what's normal, and that was real. We did eventually go to a more progressive church that's more common to like what people associate with like Christian churches now, with drums and music, and it was more normal-ish. So it was still organized religion, but yeah, I mean, it was really strange. Like the overall concept for people when they think you didn't listen to normal music, or why I say the word cultish, which I think it's hard to throw that word around, because it's like a lot of things can give culty vibes these days, multi-levels, or like, anything could be a cult. But why I say specifically some stuff about Adventism being cultish is because people are so insular. They don't leave their community. They encourage you to date and marry within the church. Maybe not a bad thing, but you don't really go and get jobs outside the church. You're either going to be a pastor at the church, or you're going to be a teacher at one of the Adventist schools. One of the big money makers for the Seventh-day Adventist church world is like healthcare. If you're East Coast, they have a really large system called Advent Health, and on the West Coast, it's called Adventist Health. Not owned by the church, but it's affiliated by the church, because the boards, like the board of directors of each of these large organizations, are predominantly controlled by people that have to have registered membership in the Adventist church. And what that means is for the health,
wild.
and so for the entire healthcare systems, they will never perform any sort of abortion care, any sort of gender transformations, any of that, because of that sort of like religious connotation. So they're huge healthcare systems, similar to the Catholic system. But what that means for people that grow up in that world is, why do you need to leave that world? You have a safety net here. If you need a job, be a pastor, be a teacher, go be a doctor, go be a nurse. You have everything you need in this bubble.
Within the community.
And so everybody knows everybody. You know each other's drama, you know each other. Just, it's very insular. And yeah, you could imagine when anything happens in that community, it can be pretty toxic, whether it's like coming out as an adult, or like what happened to me as a kid in that more traditional church. I was actually sexually abused by another person in the church. That was he was a teenager. I was 5 years old, and he was my babysitter. But he was another member of the church, and my parents were worship leaders with like his parents up on stage, and so they would regularly have practice and would leave us unattended with his sister and the teenage boy to babysit my sister and I. And for about 2 years, while my parents and his parents were either practicing or doing whatever, but I was being abused, and not anybody noticed. And what was worse is like, even after it came out, like into the light, what was happening 2 years after he's caught in the act. Social workers were involved, police were involved. Like, I remember this as like a core memory. We were still, my parents had like been on the schedule to like lead worship with his parents like a couple weeks after. And I remember even after I had to meet with the police and the social workers and everything was out in the open, I was still brought over to their house, and my parents still had worship practice with his family. And I remember feeling like I had somehow done something wrong by telling everybody, and this guy, I won't say his name, but he told me, he's like, yeah, we're not gonna be able to see each other anymore. And I remember feeling like I had done something so wrong to screw up this situation, not realizing I was a victim. I was 5, 6 years old at the time, and even after it had come out that I was a victim, I was still somehow left with that person. It's hard to think about, even talking to my parents, imagine how hard it is for them to think about, like, they were doing everything they could to try to protect me, and they'd made so many mistakes. They looked the other way, and w- it was something we wrestled with, but it was coupled with this conversation of my sexuality since I was 6 years old, since they found out. And not only was it tied in with this drama within the church because I was now sexually abused by another person in the church that was young enough to get away with it. I'll just say that. He was young enough to be given the card of innocence. He didn't know what he was doing. But the sad thing was, when you look at how young he was, like, who the fuck did that to him? Like, that wasn't.
Yeah.
And when these things aren't treated with seriousness, it creates these type of dynamics. And it was a conversation in my family for at least 7 years after that, because they were so afraid that I would somehow be impacted by that event. And I don't know what they were afraid of, that I would end up being depressed or hypersexualized in my head. And they've never confessed to this, but I think that they were just afraid that I would somehow be gay through that process, that I wasn't actually born this way, that I
became gay because a male assaulted you.
And so that was their stance from the beginning, and that's how they presented this to me, was that because this happened to me, this is going to be what I struggle with, but it's still my choice whether I'm going to embrace this struggle or surrender to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I not only had to embrace that and decide whether or not that abuse actually had an impact on me, or whether or not that even narrative was true or not. Maybe I was just this way and I happened to be abused, which was never told to me as an option. But what ended up happening was just never got talked about again. It was like planted as a seed in my brain for that period of kind of when my brain is mushy and influential and they could kind of control how it develops from there. It turned into a quiet nothing. They never talked about it again. And eventually I saw the guy. And, mind you, he was about 13 when I was 13 when I was 6. So quite the age range. When I went to high school, he was no longer there, but he was the assistant football coach of the team that I was on. And so, like, I knew this guy still, like, I had some memories with him, but I didn't, your childhood brain sometimes protects your adult brain by, like, wrapping itself up and, like, forgetting on purpose because you don't want to remember what happened. And so all that I could remember was just something happened that, like, caused us to no longer be friends and our families to no longer vacation with each other and to see each other. And I couldn't actually remember what happened. I was, I think, sophomore or junior in high school. And I had to ask my mom, like, what happened with us in this family? Like, what, I had some almost felt like faint visions or dreams that, like, I felt like these things did happen, but, like, were they real? And she told me everything that I remembered was true, and they just never talked about it again. So it just felt like this foggy dream, but, like, it haunted me. Every conversation, every time my parents looked at me, like, sideways, like, could he actually be gay, or maybe he's just
traumatized.
It haunted me until I chose to control my story and my narrative and my path. And but yeah, until that point, it's just I was along for the ride. It was quite the.
It breaks my heart for you. Like, obviously, this is not the first time I'm hearing this, but it can't not break your heart for so many reasons. And thank you for being so vulnerable and willing to share, because I know that it's not an easy topic, especially for men to open up about sexual assault. It's so difficult. And my fiance and I were literally just talking about this, like, yesterday, about how, particularly within the church, unfortunately, historically, amongst many religions, there's been abuse. And it's heartbreaking. And I believe the statistic is 1 in 6 men are sexually assaulted.
Wow.
And you would never think that, because it's not talked about nearly as much as it is for women. And I think I'll pop them up and correct myself on the screen in the video pod if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1 in 3 women, which is obviously 50% more than 1 in 6 men. But 1 in 6 is still way too many. 1 in 3 obviously is too many. 1 in 6 still too many. Like the fact that this many of us young people are experiencing that in our youth is just horrific. But that's equally why it's so important to talk about these things for those who are able and willing to. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that, as you kind of touched on, like it did play a big role in your coming out journey and people kind of like belittling your identity as a gay male to being a symptom or side effect
trauma response
of the sexual abuse. And I'm curious if that ever made you question if your gayness was simply a symptom of this childhood trauma, or if you just always knew deep down, yes, this is who I am, and you were certain in that.
All of the time. Like I believed that entirely what my parents told me. Like I believed that. And I almost wanted to believe that because that was easier to deal with than the reality that there's something in my life that I can't change. Like it would be easier to accept that something happened to me and this is why I have a certain feeling. And then therefore all I have to do is just not feel that way. And
go to therapy and work through the trauma.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, right? But I can't speak for other people's experiences. Similar to you say this all the time. Like you've only lived in your experience. And like there's some people that I know have been assaulted that could never ever be around that gender or that type of person. Again, whether it's the height or the body weight or the hair, it's an aversion. Like they are completely repulsed. And my reaction wasn't that. It wasn't attracted or it wasn't repulsed. I don't even know how to describe how I understood it, except for I believed what was told to me because I wanted to. I wanted to believe it was something that was in my control. And then when I came out, I was 19, and I came out slowly to friends and family first and louder 2 years later. But it occurred to me that like, yeah, maybe that tale that was told to me of this just being a side effect or a symptom, that might not be the case. But also, what do I know? All that I know is my experience. And I know that did impact me. I can't tell you how. I didn't necessarily flip a switch at the age of like a 6-year-old that I am one way or the other. No, it did definitely screw with my brain. Like no 6-year-old is supposed to go through that. Like, but what I had to kind of wrestle with and land on is, what does it matter? Like whether people are responding to their trauma in a way that helps them get by, or whether it is, I was always this way and I was abused and I still am this way. I am this way, period. Like, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. The present is who Bradon is. So who is Bradon? Bradon is this guy. He's gay, and there's nothing that he could do to change it. And at the time, though, when I did believe that, like, there was some sort of connection with the trauma, kind of, and you were friends with me at this point. Actually, no, sorry, this was just before, but you remember this.
Yes.
I was claiming to be bi. Like,
I was gonna get into it. Don't worry, we were gonna get into the claim.
And many cisgendered gay men know that stop on their journey. It's just kind of like it's a halfway point before you come out. You're dipping a toe. I'm just bi. I'm just looking. It's
just an option.
It's like window shopping. And I started with me on Tinder, swiping on men, and just like, oh, let me just see. And I still kept looking at women, but that's how I entertained the idea of like, maybe this is just a trauma response. So therefore I'm bi and I still have the natural, quote unquote, natural attraction that I always had. So therefore I just have to explore this phase and get it out of the way. And then I'll settle into like the normal life that I want, the white picket fence and the kids and like the normal life. Yes, I wanted easy and I wanted simple. And the path that I was heading down wasn't that. So being bi meant kind of the best of both worlds. I could embrace who I was, but didn't have to acknowledge the other bits of my identity that I was just trying to kind of ignore at that point. And
didn't, in a way, you didn't have to like commit
Yeah.
There wasn't this like commitment to the identity of being a gay man.
It was the exact opposite. It's like commitment issues. I literally, and there was reasons for it. Like I wasn't fully out. Like I was, like you said, like dipping the toe in the water. And I think a lot of people, especially in unsafe situations, what I mean by that is like if you're at home supported by your family, if you're working at a job where you know that like your livelihood is at stake, if you come out, like those are the circumstances that like I get. Like I chose to walk a very slow coming out journey because of like the consequences that were up against me, potentially getting kicked out of the house, no income, no job prospects, no degree, no place to live. Like thankfully my family didn't react that poorly, but in my head, because of how I was raised, I was prepared for that and I couldn't. But yeah, no, it's a lot of people have different experiences than I do. Like I was lucky in some weird extent to deal with the worst of the rejection from my parents kind of like up front. Like they were pretty bad. But within a relatively short period, like 3 to 5 years, they, I don't want to say that did like a complete 180, but like, you know, long story short, like my parents, they walked me down the aisle. Like they love my husband as their own son. And like, I don't know how they got to where they were to where they're at now. And there's so many different moments in between of growth, but like, I won't say it was because of me and because I said a certain thing. There was just a lot of grace and growth and willing to like allow each other to be who they were. And for me, that meant my parents had to kind of like give me some space to whether I was coming out as gay or coming out as bi or then coming out as gay again, which is ultimately what I did. I came out as gay and then I broke up with the guy to date a woman again. And my parents were like, okay, we don't know whether to be happy or sad or happy, but they knew that I was on my journey trying to figure it out. And, you know, all that I can tell people that might also feel like they're there, you know, in the midst of trying to wrestle with family, work, religion, and being in touch with like who they actually are, like just take it slow and give yourself so much grace just to like to make mistakes, to find a version of yourself that you've never been before, just to realize that maybe that isn't who you want to be, but you're so glad that that was a piece of who you are so that you can now move forward into, you know, an even different, better version. You know, it's like hard to not, the analogy of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's like my entire experience. It's like I keep living in these different forms of identities, like 20 years as a conservative Seventh-day Adventist in my family, thinking life was one way. Now, when I came out, do you think I just erased that period of my life and just forgot about it and moved on? I tried to because it was hard to kind of wrestle with both. But I think you remember the stage where I was trying to be both. I was like, I am a gay Christian. And I put that on my bio, I was hashtagging it because that helped me at that stage of my life. As much as I was doing it to try to portray to other people a sense of confidence and self-acceptance, it was helping me with that identity. And then I went from that to completely against organized religion. You know, I still like you. I was like, you know, I'm spiritual, but like I got so even after coming out and trying to encourage my home church to, you know, be different than the other churches. Like, you know, you guys don't have to do the same things. Like you guys can actually do things different. I laid myself out there and did nothing good. It just hurt myself in the long run. So I went from feeling like I needed to be a gay Christian to both appease that in-between identity of coming out and leaving the church, and so therefore have a foot in both doors, and then
trying to bridge your two worlds.
Yeah. It's just it's like a pendulum that swings back and forth all of the time, and
we're constantly all trying with our own identity to find that equilibrium, which we're definitely going to get into because we've both had our own like road we've walked to find that equilibrium, and we're still swinging in many ways. And you think you found it, and then whoop, the wind blows and the pendulum swings again. And that's, the older you get, the more you realize that it's just like a part of life. But I'm curious, in so many times in your life, kind of like having this, you know, am I just gay because of the abuse that I faced? Am I bisexual and I can just choose to pick a woman? There's all these conversations that we hear, right? There's this very common rhetoric amongst certain people that being gay is a choice. And I know that I certainly never chose to be straight. I've just always known.
But did you choose to be blind?
I did.
Yeah.
My soul chose this.
Yes. No.
But like, listen, we've all had our experimentation.
Yeah.
You know, I've experimented and I was like, nope, definitely straight. Made out drunk a few times with some girlfriends, one of which I was her gay awakening.
Oh, you converted somebody. Good job, Molly.
I converted somebody. I attended her wedding. She has 2 kids. She's very happy. But yes, I did my enough experimentation to be like, nope, definitely straight.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think many people can understand that, like, they've just always known who they were.
Yeah.
When for you was the first time you can recall having a crush on a boy?
I mean, this is the most honest answer that I could give, and this is how complex abuse is. But it was the guy that abused me. Because at that age, I didn't know that was abuse. I thought that was acceptance. I thought that felt like love. And so and that was the first inclination that my mom started to have, was like, I had an affinity, an attraction to this guy that wasn't normal. And so even me at that age, like, I remember that feeling. Like, I remember feeling like I didn't feel like any of my other friends like I did towards him. And so if you can imagine that being your kid, and what would you tell your kid in that moment when, like, I remember that feeling that I had just getting squashed, because I remember my parents and realized that was so inappropriate. Like, it was not only inappropriate in their minds because of the religious element of, you know, you can't be gay, but it's also like, this guy just abused you.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that is part of the response that I had, that they were so afraid that, you know, not only would that possibly linger into like, I'm going to be gay someday, but is this going to like just really confuse our kid? But yeah, and it did. It did. But it also, like, I knew at that young age. And so I remember whenever people ask that question, it almost sounds like insane that I was like, yeah, no, it was before I even went to kindergarten. Like, I knew, but I did. And it was, I then like almost turn around the question of like, well, how do you define knowing? Because like, I knew, but I denied it until I was 19. So like, is knowing when you have the thought, or is it when you acknowledge the thought? Because it was always there, but like, I just pretended it wasn't. Like, even me, like, full transparency, I was like, I am a good Christian, I'm not going to have sex before marriage. The moment that I started to realize that, like, I am probably always going to have this attraction to men that I have, and that's never going to go anywhere, I was determined to prove that attraction wrong. Be like, no, I'm actually attracted to women.
I just have to find the hottest woman in existence.
I had to find the first one that would respond. I didn't even care. It was just a quick, and you know, still love that person. You know, good friend. But definitely is not a matter of like who you can sexually perform with will determine your sexual identity. And that's how I thought it was. It was like, you know what? I'm going to prove all these people wrong. I'm going to prove myself wrong. I'm not gay. I just need to sleep with a woman. And I did. And I just high-fived myself, sorry.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did. It was a horrible story. I won't even get into it. But yeah, no, it was just, I was letting that entire narrative dictate my life and my decisions. Like, I was so dead set that I wasn't actually gay, that I was like, I'm going to take this virtue that I had for my entire life of saving myself for one person, throw it out the window just because I want to prove to myself that I'm straight.
Right.
Yeah. So I cared so much about one of those virtues more than the other, but yeah.
How did you're in this your teenage years trying to convince yourself that, like, sure, I know I like men, but I can repress that and I can like force myself, if I find the right one, I stick it in her and it feels good enough. Like, I can do this.
Yeah.
What did it feel like when you were dating a woman? Now that you're married to a man, like, you've dated men.
Yeah.
How did the feeling of dating a woman feel for you? Like, did it just feel like hanging out with a friend? Like, what was that feeling of like knowing it was wrong but trying to force it to be right?
It was so stressful. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done. I mean, imagine like you're not only trying to convince yourself, but you're trying to convince another person that like, I hope they don't see anything like that I know is going on, right? Like, you're denying everything in your head, but like you're biggest fear as someone that's suppressing their identity is somebody, peeking behind the curtain. And that happens so many times, mostly with your peers. As a man, it doesn't take long for you to be around other, jerk buttholes your age to start calling you fat or gay boy or whatever. And you start to feel like, what do they know? Like, what did I do? Like, they know something. And it's like they're just doing what literally culture and society has told them to do, which is to be homophobic little shits. And I don't want to permiss them or blame them, but it's society and people that perpetuate society. I was so afraid, though, because of those experiences that I was like, she's going to know, she's going to find out. And I was so stressed about keeping that secret and trying to keep this performative side what does a straight person act like? How does a straight person I remember the first time I was trying to make out with a girl, and this was not I had kissed a girl in 8th grade freshman year, and I was like, oh, cute, like a little peck. Now I'm in high school, I should know how to kiss a girl at this point, and she was kind of just waiting, and I'm just kind of also waiting. And I'm like, what are we waiting for, and she's just kind of was left wondering what I'm doing with my hands and why they're just kind of like a mannequin. Just I was so not participatory, and if that's not a sign of just an out of body, I don't know. But yeah, I was so stressed because all that I wanted was just to do what she felt I should be doing, right?
You're playing a character, right? Putting on the best acting job you've ever gotten. It's playing the role of Christian boyfriend to a Christian girl.
And I was going through relationships like socks, like underwear, or I was just regularly trying to find a fit that would a fit to my life. Yes, be comfortable, or to actually make me so distracted from the fact that I was actually, as soon as I was getting back from my date, looking up gay porn and just enjoying myself, and then turning it off and being like, no, I'm not gay, I'm straight. See, I have a girlfriend. I would have to find somebody that would distract me from that reality enough that I would pretend it wasn't real. And so as soon as the woman, the person would fizzle out, the honeymoon phase is over, I would duck out. It's just okay, great, you're not the one. And I felt so bad. I mean, I've done an apology tour you couldn't imagine after I came out, because the amount of people that felt that there was something genuinely wrong with them. That mind you, the entire time I knew it was me, but I didn't know how to communicate what was actually going on. So the apology tour was real with every one of these women that I dated that are incredible, and thankfully I didn't permanently do damage with, and they've rebounded and have been happily involved with relationships, and we've moved on. We have friendships now, and it's been great. But yeah, I had to.
I mean, one of them was in your groom's party.
Yeah, no, I was in her wedding, and she was in my wedding, and I have that's part of the journey of when I was dating those people, it was not genuine, and I hurt them, and I had to go back as who I am now and make amends and be more real with that. But I genuinely, whatever stage, if you're, part of the LGBTQ community, or if you're on some sort of coming out journey, wherever you're at on that, you just got to own it and be real, whether you're on the apology tour, or whether you're on the figuring it out phase of the pendulum of swinging back to really far in the church direction, and you still want to be a gay Christian, or maybe you're outside of that. Maybe you're done with the church because you realize, they're probably never going to see me in the way that I see me, and why would I go there? And that's where I'm at. And that was the most disheartening thing, that I think everybody could have told me how this story would have ended with Bradon going to church, but I've not given up on it. I still believe my beliefs. I still believe in, what I believe, but I don't encourage people in my shoes or in our community to try to compromise their safety, their well-being, just to find that sense of community that will never treat you as an equal. And that's hard for me to say, because 10 years ago, I would have told you guys the exact opposite. But that's what I mean about, you just got to own who you are and allow yourself to grow, and you'll change, and you just, I hope that you've seen that in me. The change is authentic, because what scares me is when you might become a version of yourself that isn't you. And I've done that at times, but as long as we bounce back to who we are, I think we can take side roads. We can have little chapters, divergent. Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely had those moments of, I talk about it in my memoir Unseen of like having these moments where I like revert back to being somebody I'm not to feel like I fit in. And I think that's like very common on the minority experience, whatever kind of minority you are. I think a lot of us, God, we just want to fit in because how easy would that be?
Yeah.
Like, how easy would it be to get to be like everybody else?
Yeah.
And there's these periods, and it's not even necessarily about hating yourself. It's just about wanting the ease and the relief of not being different in every room.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you're in that period, you can like revert back to just trying to squeeze on a shoe that doesn't fit, but being like, it's okay, I can make it work.
Yeah.
Just so that you feel like you have community, even though it's the wrong community. I don't know. It's a very strange feeling, but and I think a lot of us can also relate to like being in relationships that we know aren't right.
Yeah.
Like I remember in high school being with somebody who I didn't romantically like. Like I had no romantic feelings for this person, but they had a lot of romantic feelings for me. And like I felt this weird pressure to like play a part and play this role because they wanted me to, and I didn't want to disappoint them. And I felt like being with them was going to make me more socially accepted or help me in certain ways. And so I just like played this part, and then it became this situation where it was like they wanted me so much that they would say things that would kind of like manipulate me into staying. And I just had to keep like pretending I liked them. And I didn't. And it was like the worst feeling because I was lying to myself and I was being untruthful to myself and to them. And ultimately, even though they were content with me pretending to play the part they wanted me to play,
you lose bits of yourself.
I am ultimately hurting them long term. Like even if it made them comfortable in those months that we were together, it's still only going to break their heart eventually. And the longer you play the part, the harder they're going to fall when you eventually have to come clean. What was that first moment of coming out like? Who did you choose to come out to? Why did you feel ready, and what did you say?
The first person that I told was my aunt. I always knew like she was kind of like the rambunctious aunt, like the wild one. We always have like a wild aunt, and I knew that like no judgment zone with her. So I knew that like what told me to tell her then, like 'cause she was always that aunt. Like I could have told her at any moment and it wouldn't have changed how she felt about me, but I just needed somebody to talk to. And I'm really close with my sister, and so I felt like I wanted to tell her first, but she's also really close with my parents and my mom, who was also my teacher. It's like this very close-knit family. So I didn't know if my sister I didn't know. It's my first time here. So I told my aunt, and she embraced me wholeheartedly, and it was an emotional thing because she kind of knew like my family, and she knew that this wasn't going to be easy and that most people were not going to react positively. But I told her because I knew she would be a safe space. And it's like, anybody that is feeling like they need to confide in somebody and wondering who to talk to, you might have to look outside your extended network. You might have to look at your hairstylist or somebody within your extended network, but you have a champion there, even if it's your crazy aunt. And she wasn't the most biggest advocate for me, but in the beginning, she was everything I needed. She was the sounding board, she was the hug, the ears, and then I got drunk that night and called my sister shortly after that. Just like rambled everything. So she heard it like a matter of hours later.
What did it feel like after holding that in for so long to like finally release it?
Scary. It felt terrifying because you spend years of your conscious energy denying this thought. And all it takes is a second of saying something different publicly for the first time that completely changes your relationship to that thought. And I do mean like it starts to really slowly devolve as you start to gain that courage that I'm going to tell somebody. But when you take that step and you start to publicly change how people know you and see you, it's a terrifying thing, in part because you're officially like you're lifting your foot off of the ground, and you haven't set it down yet on the other step. So it's this mid-air feeling of like free fall, especially
little
like
off balance.
Yeah, a little off balance, or like that feeling when you didn't see the step coming and you take it anyways, and you're like, yeah,
that's my whole life. Yes, do I know the feeling, Bradon? Yes.
Yeah, it's close to that, and I was like, in part of me was like exhilarated, like it is freeing. I think that's what a lot of people expect. It's like it's liberating. You're finally like free of this secret, but like the freedom and liberation that I really was hoping for didn't come until I owned the piece that I had to like fight for a decade later. It didn't come from that coming out. Like what came after that was tough conversations, emotional spirals, therapy. Like it was the start of the it gets better journey. But it's not a quick thing. How it felt though, like terrifying and liberating, kind of like wrapped into one.
You say that your parents didn't react the best, but they also didn't react the worst, and that they didn't like kick you out to the curb and make you fend for yourself, which sadly we know is the reality all too often for people who are queer. What was your parents' reaction when you finally came to them, and how long did it take before like first coming out to your sister and your aunt before you came out to your parents?
That's a good question. No one's actually like really drilled down on the timeline, which for me was so methodical. Like I had people that I had to. It was about 8 months, I think, from the time that I came out to my aunt and my sister, and the process that I had in my head, because I was so afraid of, because I still lived with them, that they could use that as leverage against me and control at any point. So I needed to make sure that I had a plan to leave, a financial plan to support myself, but my little like manipulative, conniving brain said, I want more than just chance and happenstance to dictate the reaction. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to set some safeguards and plant some seeds in people's brains, because I knew, judging by how my parents had reacted in the past, that they weren't going to greet me with cake and balloons. Like, I kind of knew that they were, if anything, best case scenario, going to cry, sob, and say, this isn't what God wants for you, and then like walk away, and we were going to be devastated. Worst case scenario, they were going to kick me out. So, or somewhere in between. But I knew that cake and balloons was not on the table. And yeah, it was, I wanted to tell my parents' community first, which is so funny, because like that was intentionally thought in my brain, because like you would think, okay, you're going to tell people in accordance of, all right, your first circle is the people that you know are going to accept you and support you. Your next circle is going to be those closest people to you, the hard conversations, your parents, or maybe your employer. I don't know. I went to my parents' friends. I went to my mom's best friend.
Weren't you terrified they would tell them?
Yes and no, because you know who my mom's best friend was my ex-girlfriend's mom. So she and I, you remember
again
this.
with the insular thing.
Yeah, everybody knows everything, and you remember this story, but we haven't mentioned it yet. But my ex-girlfriend's mom, the one that was in our wedding, she 100% clocked me when I was dating her daughter. She said, Bradon, I was in high school one day, and this guy that I was dating, I was madly in love with him, but he always just didn't know how to interact with me. You could just tell like he's a little awkward, and I didn't know what to think of it at the time. I thought he was just, like he's just a good Jesus-loving Christian and wanted to respect me. And I didn't really put it together until he came out and married a man. She straight up told me, she's like, and she's telling me all this. I'm like, where is she going? Where is she going? She's like, if you ever find, and the way she phrased this, it kind of came out, interesting, but she didn't mean it in a bad way. She said, if you ever find out that the wires are crossed in your brain someday, know that I will always love you.
Aww.
And what she meant by the wires are crossed, not like that's a bad way, but just in like, the heteronormative way, like
right.
Your wires are straight or whatever. So she said, meanwhile, I'm dating her daughter, and I'm like, no, don't say that. Like, you don't know that. But she saw something and knew. So yeah, of course I was going to tell her. Like, she clocked me and she knew. So I was kind of excited to tell her, in part because she was not only my mom's best friend, she was the associate pastor of our church. She was a big influence in my family. So
And she had already told you that she would love
she would,
you.
yeah.
So that did
It was
feel
a
like
safe
a
spot.
safe space.
And then I knew, though, who's my mom going to turn to when she's having a hard time. She's going to turn to Dawn. Dawn was her name. And she did just that. They turned to both their pastor, who had already heard it from me, who I'd already come out to, and they turned to the associate pastor, who had already heard it from me and I had already come out to. So I had told those people before I told my parents, because I knew who they were going to go and talk to next. And I'm like, I'm going to go plant a seed with them first, so this isn't a big shock. It wasn't a big shock to anybody, but what was your other question? Who did I tell? What was the reaction?
What was the reaction? Yeah.
They cried, like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be, honestly, because, like, in my head, I had built this up to be the worst, hardest conversation I'd ever have in my life, and I'm like, how would I ever tell them that their son is a disappointment and is gonna ruin, like, their chances of having, like, how do you say that? I'm like, just do it. Take him to Starbucks. Like, there is no good way.
Wait, did you actually do it at Starbucks?
Yeah, straight up. Like, that's where we had most of our big
Just sipping on a mocha frappuccino, and you're like, I'm gay?
Yeah.
How did you say
They
it?
knew. They knew the moment I said, hey, can I take you guys out for Starbucks? They knew that I was going to come out to them. I also started dropping little hints. I started shaving my legs and going to Zumba classes and hanging out with this man named Sean. And I started regularly talking about Sean. So
That's always, you always
Shout out
know
to
somebody
Sean.
has a crush when they like randomly insert somebody's name into conversation whenever possible.
Yeah.
They have a crush.
So they never told me, though, that they had an inclining before. I still felt like they were going to get blindsided, but my parents and I have an open relationship now. They knew what was coming, and they reacted. Like, I say good because, like, I've seen some really horrible reactions from parents, and, like, mind you, I had, they told me that they're concerned about me being able to go to heaven. They're concerned about me being able to have a good job, for me to be able to work. My family's nonprofit for the blind. They're concerned about me being able to continue to participate with that. Everything was a concern for them except for me and my happiness. And it just felt like, for once, though, like, I was prepared for this conversation. Like, I wasn't crying, they were crying. I wasn't asking questions, they were asking questions. And I was in the driver's seat. And rather than, like, panicking and, like, I need them to accept me, I knew that they weren't. I surrendered that. And I still hoped that they would, but I kind of knew that they wouldn't. So there wasn't this brokenheartedness and disappointment from my end.
You had almost grieved that. Like, you had accepted.
I felt relieved. I finally got through the dreaded coming out conversation with my parents, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to go. So, yeah, they still rejected me, quote unquote. They didn't kick me out, but they still told me straight up, like, they didn't want to meet who I was dating. And for 2 years after that, even my husband now that they would not meet him. Mind you, they would invite all of my sister's boyfriends and whoever to go on trips with us, but they would not even shake their hand with my person. So did that hurt? Yeah. Did they welcome? There's just all things around the holidays became tough, and it was never tough with straight relationships or heteronormative relationships, and I hated that. So it felt like it could have been worse, but it's just like I still was like pushing for them to, like, just treat me normally, just treat me like your son. And but they were like, we love you, and we could, completely disown you, so you should be happy that, like, we're still figuring it out. So it was a very real, like, the way I talk about it to people, and every family's different. Some parents are so abusive with their homophobia that I would never suggest that somebody stay in that environment for their own safety. That was not my circumstances, and I knew my parents. I knew the risks, but I knew that my parents were different, and that I've seen them change and evolve in so many areas, politically, religiously. They went from going to a church that couldn't clap and have guitars to one that has drums and has better music, and it's more progressive. It's just, I've seen their mentality is one to kind of grow and evolve. The more information that they have and the more opportunity that they have to listen to people
outside of that insular bubble.
Yeah, you just have to sit and listen. And so what I had to do, instead of being somebody that was combative with them, instead of somebody that was saying, you need to accept me because I'm your son, and if you don't, you guys are shitty parents, and if you don't, you guys are, you're not Christians, you're homophobic, and that's just hypocrite. Like, I never did that. They kind of knew. They already knew. Like, you don't have to tell, like, people have heard that before, and if you're trying to take that angle with some loved one in your life, know that you might be adding an additional voice, but they've heard it before. They know their beliefs, and they've still chosen their bigoted beliefs over the idea that they will be homophobic. Just so you know, they're not afraid of homophobia. They've embraced that. What changed my parents' response was the fact that like I didn't pull away from them. There was just distance. Like I still, if Andrew couldn't show up and be around, I still was, but I was around a lot less. I didn't completely put up a wall. Like I didn't take the rejection and the homophobia that my parents had presented, and I didn't turn away from it. Like I kind of embraced it, not because it felt good. No, like I was ready for it, and I think that's why it was easier for me to embrace it. And it wasn't like the most toxic form of it. It was more of a palatable form that I could understand. But the more grace or time or just willingness that I would give them to kind of just let this ruminate, like give it time, like let them like just go on this journey by themselves and hope that if they have questions, they'll ask. And I tried to give them books. I tried to like, your last question was like, how long did it take them? Like I tried to push them like on along the journey to make it quicker because like couldn't happen quick enough. Like Andrew's here, my husband's here. Like let's start treating him normally. And they weren't ready. And there was nothing that I could have done. No books, no conversations, anything that would have sped it along quicker than me just being present, just continuing to show up, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much it disappointed me. Again, big caveat there is that their abuse wasn't continuing. Like they were at the point of trying to grow and change. So try to take what I'm saying for a grain of salt and equate it to your situation if it might sound familiar. But if you're in a situation where your family is abusive to an extent that you're not safe emotionally or physically, don't give them the time of day. Like, don't wait for them to come around. Remove yourself from the situation and wait for them to come back to you. But my parents were kind of in that happy medium that I just had to keep them enough away. Like, I moved into an apartment with my boyfriend at the time, Andrew, which happened to be 5 minutes away from where you moved, Molly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was how they were kind of forced into accepting Andrew's, because I moved out of their house. I moved in with Andrew, and they had this new reality. It was no longer just Bradon, it was Bradon and Andrew. And I embraced them for not getting it. I didn't accept them. I embraced them, just in the same way that they didn't accept me, but they embraced me. And we let that embracing of one another, just as family, not as advocates, not as allies, but just as family, we let that support carry us through long enough through the turmoil. And then the pandemic happened, and we had no choice but to all start
Kumbaya.
Kumbaya. Yeah, the world just changed, and we became best friends after that. And here I am.
Well, I've seen in my 10 years knowing you and your family, I met you and your family at the same time. So I've known your parents as long as I've known you.
It's crazy.
And I have seen everybody in your family come such a long way. But when on your journey did you decide, I'm going to stop trying to force the shoe to fit and stop pretending I'm straight, and I'm going to just go on a date with a man and see what it's like? Like, what was that first date with a man like? How did that come to be?
Oh.
And how did it differ from the feeling of dating the girls?
It's so funny because like the first man that I dated, I was still a boy. I was like 19. And this guy he was 32. He was a man. And so how did that feel? It just felt weird. I felt like this guy, he had an apartment and bills. And not only was he a man, I was a boy, and I just felt like it was hot. Like that was the thing I liked about it. I liked the age difference because it was like not only what I didn't want was somebody that was also figuring it out.
Well, also like you knew that what you were doing was already quote taboo
yeah.
in your community, and so like why not just like lean into the taboo of an age gap relationship?
Yeah. And it was a super respectful relationship. It was like not even a relationship. He didn't want labels. He didn't want to have sex. He was like training for the Olympics. So he's like, I don't want commitment, but he's like, I'm really fascinated with you and your journey, because he knew that like I was still not out. And so it was the companionship that I would say that we dated, because we'd have dinners, we would have dates just for the company. But for me, it was almost about getting comfortable. Like,
was it more like almost like a mentorship?
Yes.
Like, I know that sounds weird.
Oh, he's like my gay mentor, like
yeah.
my gay tour. Yeah, no, very much like just having like thoughtful conversations to kind of help guide me through the coming out process. And like there was romantic feelings that were just never explored, but like that was almost like the excitement that continued from like, you know, when you're gay and denying it, there's always this like excitement, kind of like underage drinking. Don't do it. But like, you know, it's exciting when you're doing it. You're just like, ooh, then you turn 21 or 18 or whatever country you're in, you know, like it just is less fun because it's allowed. And now it's just, I have to
You're
pay
like, oh,
for
I
it.
can just do
I
it
can
at
just
a
do-
bar.
It's no
I don't
longer.
have to hide in my friend's basement or at a local park.
When something is forbidden, there's something exciting about it. So I think it was a nice, like, exciting step, kind of like what you said. It's like it's taboo. So not only was it now I'm at having a date with another man, but it was somebody that is at a totally different stage of life, another decade, and didn't last long though because I went from that feeling like it was somebody that's so like in a different state of life. Then it's like I want somebody that gets me. I want someone that like has been through the same trauma, like religious trauma and that kind of stuff. And so I thought it would be a good idea to like date within the bubble, like find a nice little gay man in the church.
Find a nice gay Christian.
Yeah, in a little Seventh-day Adventist community there, which there are some. There's some gays in the community. They didn't work out for me because I realized I don't know. I say I'm not Seventh-day Adventist because like I don't go to church. But if anybody looks me up, I'm still a member. Like they have me on the registry, and I'm keeping myself on the registry just in case they use that for like RSVPs for heaven. Like if there happens to be an RSVP list, I want to be on it. No, I'm just kidding. But I just didn't want. I went from wanting to date an Adventist because they're gonna get the nuances of like how weird and quirky it is, and our families are gonna get the weirdness, to then neither of our parents wanted to meet us. Like they did not want to like meet our person, our significant other. So we went like on this really isolating kind of relationship of just like nobody wanted to see us work out or be happy. And
yeah, it's like neither of you had a welcoming home.
No.
It's like it's one thing if one of your family won't accept you at Christmas.
Yeah.
But if both families don't accept you at Christmas, you're like alone on a little island.
Yeah. That relationship though was really pivotal though, because this was right before I met my husband, and I was convinced that I was bi, and that part of this relationship with the man in the church, like just in the same way that if I dated the most perfect woman, that maybe my same-sex attraction will go away. I thought that maybe if I just scratched this itch, you know, like maybe if I just went by,
you got it out of your
I
system.
got it out of my system. And he was somebody that, you know, he loved the Lord and he went to church. And so therefore, you know,
it wasn't as sinful because he's also a Christian.
And I've probably never devastated another person in my life. And I will always feel bad for this. We never would have worked out, first of all. But like I straight up broke up with him because I was like, I want to marry a woman, is what I told him. I said, I could not be gay. I cannot deal with the struggle of our families and our workplaces and what is about to like get thrown at us. And so I just straight up I copped out. Like I took the easy way out, both of the breakup conversation. Like rather than, first of all, I didn't even know how I really felt at that moment. Like I chose to go with the lie that I believe, like, you know, I'm bi and you're not a woman, so therefore we're not compatible. But the reality is we just weren't compatible. But I listened to this other farcical narrative in my head that like, I was at a pivotal point. Like I was working at this job where I had to choose between coming out or keeping the job.
Yeah.
And like that was the deciding factor. Is like I chose to break up with this guy because that meant that I could keep the job. And I would stay in the closet and not deny that I was bi, but you know, I got that out of my system, and now I'm gonna go and find my spouse, my nice, beautiful woman to
your Miss Teen USA.
Oh, that was it was Miss U. It was Miss America. Thank you.
Miss America. Sorry, you're Miss America that you flew to Utah to go on a date with?
Atlantic City.
Didn't like the church pay for it?
My dad did. Which you're getting all these details like 75% right. You're getting a C.
I've known you for 10 years. Let me live.
That's good. You got it. No, it was 100% right. One of the women that I thought was perfect that would make me straight was Miss Idaho. She broke up with me because I was too homophobic. Miss Idaho, we love you. We're trying to get on a podcast. Have you ever heard of
Too homophobic.
yes. Have you ever heard of the podcast Conversations with People That Hate Me?
Oh my God, no.
We're auditioning for that because we have a very fun banter.
That's
We love
hilarious.
we're good with each other now. Like kind of similar Christiana and I, we worked through it, but like yeah, she felt rejected. Like
Well, this truly is such proof that like some of the most homophobic people are closeted. Like,
oh, 100%. You can clock people if they who cares? First of all, like there's so many things wrong in the world. If you really care so much about this small sliver of the population and which hole they happen to stick it in, that sounds like a you problem. I'm sorry. And like it's just weird to me that people are so like, and it has nothing to do with like,
Yeah.
oh, we're teaching your kids or influencing culture. Like, I think there's one group of people that's out there doing that, and we spent a lot of time today talking about them already. But yeah, no, see, her name was Sierra. She wouldn't mind me name dropping her. She is like still a good friend of mine now, mainly because we worked through this conversation. Because like, yeah, I was wildly homophobic because I was trying to deny something really real that, yeah. So now anytime I see somebody with that same sort of intensity that will have that kind of like approach to my life, as much as I want to kind of throw it back in their face and be like, yeah, I see you and you're just, you're fam. I try to answer with compassion just because like I know what that's like. And
Yeah.
I was that homophobic dick. I was the one
and they're
that,
on their journey,
yeah.
and like you can't force them into a different path. Like
That's-
they have to walk it for
people
themselves.
like the coming out journey, like it's so hard. It's hard enough, but like it just needs more grace. It needs more grace through and through. Like you need to be gracious with the people that don't yet understand you yet. Not because you don't deserve to have the support. No, you deserve the love, but like it's such a hard challenge for you to push this rock uphill, to try to force change upon somebody when they are pushing against you. Like, I don't mean give up on them ever trying to support you, but like it is not your battle to change them. Like, but that doesn't mean like give up on them. Don't remove yourself, because if you believe anything about like your spirit and like your love for your family, it's like if you just continue to show up, like they're going to miss you. They're going to want to be around you and your person, and they're going to want to change, to want to like be a part of your life. And you just have to live a life that is so like bold and proud of who you are, that makes them almost like see you in that. I think if people, when they act like they're uncertain or they waver, your family, your pastor, your community will exploit that. The more that you really just like, okay, you think I'm a sinner? You think I'm going to go to hell? Okay, 1, I didn't ask. 2, I don't care. 3, wait till I tell you what I think about you. And I don't even tell them that. Like, it's just not my business. It's just, if we gave people more grace that are treating us and mistreating us that way, and hope that maybe they would reciprocate, I'll take the first step. Like, I don't mind being the bigger person. Like, yeah, I like to say that like I'm kind of a victim as part of a marginalized community, and I shouldn't have to be the one to take that initiative. But like, if that leads me to the destination of healing and better relationships with my family, I'll take the shit. I'll take the dirt, But yeah, it's been growth of hurting people along the way, like hurting innocent people, like we're like breaking up with a man that I said he wasn't right for me because he wasn't a woman, breaking up with women because they just weren't men, none of it. And so if I could tell you like 2 words, and who told this to me early on is your manager, Reuven. Shout out to Reuven. He's like, 2 words to summarize your entire spiel, Bradon, is just be yourself. And I've really tried to own that at each turn in each day. It's like, it's different every moment of my life. It was different when I first came out. It's different where I'm at now. And wherever you're at, it's okay. It's okay to change. It's okay to grow. And it's okay to lose people along the way. And one of the most precious things about friends that you carry with you throughout that, like, we haven't seen each other, Molly. Like, it's been like, it's almost a year, and it feels
And when
like
we did see each other, it was for an hour-long coffee.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, it was like a year before that.
Yeah. It's literally the stage of life and proximity, and I hate every ounce of it, but I love how when we enter into the same environment, it's like, mind you, life has changed so much. Like, when we try to catch up, it's like, oh my gosh, you're engaged. I got a new car. I got cats. You're now an aunt. Literally, this was our conversation.
Yeah.
It's so different than when we were 5 minutes away from each other, but if you have somebody like that in your life that you live 5 minutes away from and you have that proximity, like, cling to them. In the same way that like Molly and I did for the stage of life that we were in our 20s to kind of bridge us through, because we're still who we were back then, but we're also entirely different people.
Yeah.
Like
Such grown and developed
it's
person.
crazy, and I love being able to like reconnect, and it feels like nothing has changed, but also like looking around and seeing this gorgeous specimen that's now your fiance, and like it's just life is, you don't know what it's going to do, and so don't stop being authentic to who you are. Like
And you
always
know
be
what?
yourself.
I've learned that like people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Mm,
And I've made peace with that. Like there's some people that I at one point in my life loved very deeply and thought would always be in my life, and for whatever reason now they aren't. And like sometimes friendship breakups
yeah,
are harder than any breakup in your life, but they served their purpose while they were meant to be there. And then there's other people in your life, like you and I, who like I deeply believe will be in each other's lives forever.
yeah,
Um, and it's not that we're in each other's lives frequently,
yeah.
but it's like I know that you are always there.
There's a term, it's like platonic soulmate. What's
Well,
the term for that?
I
It's
always call you my platonic soulmate.
no, but there's like there's a
Twin flame?
twin flame. Thank you. Except isn't there a cult named after twin
Yeah, I
flame?
think there's like a cultishness. It's like they've really ruined that term.
Yeah.
You alluded to this in one of your recent answers, and I want to circle back to it.
Yeah.
The whole working for somebody who you knew would fire you if you came out.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about that experience.
Oh, don't recommend it. Don't recommend working for someone that won't want you working for them if you come out. And at the time, like there was no employment protections in the United States, and even frankly now, good luck trying to test how that law will protect you in the current administration and the courts and everything. But even back then, before we had nationwide employment protections for queer people, it was kind of caught in this employment dynamic that falls right between churches having the right to choose religious beliefs and people that claim religious beliefs to hire and fire people because it's against what they believe. But then also, I was there not providing a religious service. I'm not a pastor. I was a professional caregiver, not like a trained professional caregiver, but I was hired to provide a service for a man that had a disability, and he was also like a public speaker, like someone else I know here, but not nearly as successful or good. But at the time, he would make me travel with him, and I would, help him with whatever he needed. I was his caregiver, so I'd help him get on and off planes, stages, meals, bathing. It was a professional environment and a job that only time that it would ever like cross a professional boundary was like as a friend, like as he eventually became like a brother to me, because like, caring for somebody in that sort of proximity, it's not just I'm here for the money. Like,
It's very intimate
yeah.
when you're helping somebody go to the bathroom and helping somebody shower.
And I did it not because it was the job, but because I cared for that man, and I cared for what he did, the good parts. Now, like he has changed quite a bit over the last decade, as I have, but two different directions. And
Yeah, he went extremely further into the direction he was already,
yeah,
and you went into a different direction.
an opposite direction, and that happened shortly after I came out. It wasn't as a consequence of it, but if he would have been, the person that he is now, I don't know if I ever would have been his friend or even worked for him, just because it's even a hard time for me to like look at him now and to still see the same person that I used to. But I cared deeply for him, and even to the point that like I knew that he probably wasn't going to want me working for him again. I was okay with that. Not okay with his beliefs, not okay with the fact that that was a reality that I was going to have to face, but I was okay with that action, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't like it, but like if he felt as a friend of mine, it was similar. It's like I was working for you, and whether it was an issue about a belief or anything else, like if you didn't want me working for you, I wouldn't just like pitch a tantrum and be like, nope, you're stuck with me. Like no. And I cared about him to a friendship extent that I assumed that like if I offered to step away, at the same time I came out, I told him, I was like, I've been dating a guy, and he knew that I was dating a guy, but I lied to him and I told him it's a girl. I told him that finally that
And
last
didn't you date
year.
his sister?
Yeah. I was interested and had dates.
Were you interested, gay man?
I was.
Where were you
Whoa.
pretending?
The idea was very attractive. The concept, beautiful idea in paper. Reality didn't pencil out. So great.
Everything's so back to that insular thing. Dating your boss's sister.
Yeah, keep it close. Keep it close. But it just like, I don't know if that's something I rethink about all the time, because I made the decision. I thought it was noble and I thought it was the right thing to not force somebody and like back him against a corner and say, and he didn't even, for him, he told me that he loved me. He's like, I don't agree with your lifestyle. I don't agree with who you are, but I love you. And he said, I'm going to have to talk to his business manager and his board of directors to see what to do next. And so he didn't even I don't know if he made the decision or what, but what I offered when I came out to him was like, if you guys find that it's too hard to keep me employed, and what I mean by that is they were associated with the church and a lot of their donors were conservative Christians that, even though my boss might not have taken an issue with my identity publicly, if people knew and saw that, his people would, his donors would, his nonprofit would. And I don't know how much of that was a cop-out, how much of that was the truth, but I thought it was genuine respect for our friendship to kind of like honor him, to not force him to fire me. Because I also hoped if there's a chance that we could see this through, the job opportunity. And it wasn't just a job. Like let's rewind a little bit. Like I dropped out of college for this job because the job wasn't like a 6-figure job. No, it was a caregiver, but I was caregiving for a man that promised to teach me how to run my own nonprofit. That promised to...
And you came from a family who your whole life ran a nonprofit that you wanted to take over.
Yeah, and a nonprofit that's truly like nonprofit. Like there's no staff. All of the money goes directly to the program. So
everybody's volunteers.
So part of that problem is, and this guy saw the problem, saw me, and part of the solution is like, you guys need a volunteer staff member to focus on bringing in funds, develop some admin, and then you guys will have some like sustainable operations to lean on. All that it took was him convincing me to drop out of school. He convinced one of our participants to move across the country, to move in with my family, and to really start going all in on the nonprofit and growing this thing. So we were all in on that dream. It wasn't his dream, it was our dream, but he was supportive of it.
He painted a picture of what the dream could become.
Yep. And he just needed a yes from us and a yes from me specifically to be his caregiver, because that was the caveat, right? Like he needed somebody to be his caregiver, but that he would pay me, but also, give me some experience. He would teach me, he'd mentor me, some life lessons that I can get into there about, what people are truly looking for in situations like that. He was offering me something that I was really looking for, which is sustainability for my family's nonprofit. And he took that and dangled it in front of me. What he really needed was a caregiver. He needed help. He needed staff. So in hindsight, he acted as anybody would, selfishly, and he would do whatever it took to get that caregiver. And he took something that caregiver cared about, a mission, a nonprofit that struggles, and he said, I will help you guys. And so when this whole dream started to unravel, all because I came out, my concern was not my income and my job security or even the friendship with this guy. I hoped the friendship would stay intact, but I knew the friendship would only stay intact if I didn't back him against a corner. I knew if he felt that I was creating an enemy out of him and I wanted him to be put in a bad spot, he would stop donating, he would stop mentoring me, he would stop mentoring the participants that were coming out to be advocates for our program. So it's all wrapped into this one thing that when he finally made the decision to let me go, and I say let me go, I did offer to resign. And he accepted my resignation. He said it has nothing to do with my sexuality, but, however he wants to frame it, he gets to speak to his God about it. And if he thinks that that's the honest truth, he can go with that. But we all know what happened, and I stand by my decisions. Part of me always wishes, man, if only I would have just forced him to fire me and then I could have sued him and walked away with a little bit more support. That's just not me. I didn't care about it to that extent. I wanted my family's nonprofit to succeed, and I wanted to walk away my head held high, and it didn't happen that way. Because even though it was amicable and I walked away, he still cut us out. He stopped mentoring me, he stopped donating, and it ended up the same way.
Which again, like if it wasn't about you being gay, he would have continued to do those things.
Yeah.
And first off, I hate when people call being a gay a lifestyle. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, being in love is your lifestyle? Like, what? Ew, stop.
Yeah.
Gross. It's just your life. It's not a lifestyle.
Yeah. What's funny is I actually do think there is a gay lifestyle, but I don't think he knows anything about it. Like, if you go to Sunset Boulevard...
But, like, you're
and
not in the gay lifestyle.
No. I know the gay lifestyle. It's like drag bingo on a Wednesday. It's like, it's literally like, it's great. Drag lifestyle is great. That's not what he's talking about.
No,
he's
literally just talking about
love.
being
He's
gay.
talking about literally me and my husband. It's like, that's not the gay lifestyle. You're talking about, but anyways, it's...
But your family's nonprofit.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like, when you came out, like you truly did risk losing everything, right? Like the church that you grew up in, the friends that you had, the family you had, the job you had, like everything was so insular. Everything was so tied to this religious belief that was against who you were. And I can't even imagine that internal struggle to just be like, do I prioritize my own happiness or do I spend the rest of my life prioritizing everybody else's happiness?
Yeah.
And checking these like external boxes of success of like having a group of friends, even if they don't love the true me.
Yeah.
And having a job, even if it's one where I have to hide this huge part of my identity.
Yeah.
And having family, even if I have to pretend to have this romantic partner I don't truly love. Like, just that's exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine. And this is right around the time when we met. We met through your family's nonprofit. And
I was so excited to introduce you to my boss at the time. I was like, Molly, because, Molly was doing really well back then. Sorry to interrupt where you're going, but I just want to say you were doing well back then. But like you weren't who you are now.
Not that well.
Not compared to. I think like for the vast majority of YouTubers out there, yeah, you were doing well, but like you didn't have.
Well, on YouTube,
you didn't have this nice golden plaque.
Followers.
Yes, I thought 5,000 was a lot, y'all. I thought it was like, wow, she has 5,000. So I was so excited to like introduce her to another disabled motivational speaker that he had millions of followers. Like he had like 11 million on Facebook. I was like, Molly, like he's gonna be great for your career. And Molly met him, was just kind of like, eh.
I was like, we ain't the same.
It was so funny. It was interesting, but like you got to meet him in that context, and I kind of knew. I was like, give it a year.
And like you still like loved him, like you still, because it was all still like the chips were still falling. Like everything was still falling to place. Everything in your life when we met was so fresh.
Yeah.
You had just lost that job, but you still had this hope that he was like going to remain involved in your life as both a friend and a partner of the nonprofit. And like you had just met who is now your husband. Like literally me and your husband came into your life the same month.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
It was within a matter of days, literally. Yeah. And I thought you were both in love with me. Literally, I was like, Molly, I can't. I'm sorry. I know you love me.
I'll never forget you coming out to me. It was so funny.
Well, because it wasn't even like I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to tell her, but I'm so egotistical and full of myself. I'm like, all right, Molly, like, I'm just not that into you, okay? Like, I see what you're trying to do. But she's like, actually, no. And I don't care.
I had like literally days before we met, me and my ex-partner, me and my ex had been together for 2.5 years. We had been best friends for 4 years before that. We had broken up in like September and it was now June. We had days before you and I met confessed that we were still in love with each other and that we wanted to get back together, but we were both traveling all summer. So we were like, let's put a pin in it and we'll come back to it in the fall when we're both like back in the same city.
Yeah.
And so I was like on cloud 9 that me and my ex were on the same page and still in love with each other and we're going to get back together. And then you're like, I know you're into me. And I was like, dude, you're the last thing on my mind. Like I'm living on cloud 9 that I'm going to get back with my ex and you're not.
Don't deny it, Molly. Don't deny it.
Dude, your arms were shaved. I knew.
Yeah.
Like you,
and legs.
You gave me sighted guide, and I was like, look, I grew up a theater kid.
Yeah.
I grew up with most of my friends being LGBTQ+. Just as like a minority in school and not feeling accepted, you just gravitate towards the other minorities who don't feel accepted.
Yeah.
So like
my
gaydar has always been pretty dang on par. And it was just so funny because you gave me sighted guide, the arms were shaved. Like there was things, you know? And then you have this freaking ego to be like, I know you're into me. And I was like, My man.
It went from the ego and then all of the religious trauma of like, I have to make this coming out conversation so
big
deep
thing.
and emotional. And I'm just like, I don't know how to tell you this.
And it's just like we knew each other for 3
Nobody knows
days.
this.
And you're like, I don't know how to tell you this. And I was like, it's like, what? It was really funny. We were like alone on a hike.
I love that because I still have. Wait, I always look at this picture of me carrying Gallup down that freaking. It was like 100 degrees, and we went downhill this like 10-mile walk to the beach, which is extreme. It's called extreme mobility, but our poor freaking service animals are like, no, we are.
No, Gallup, like his side hustle was sleeping. Like his napping was his like best friend, and so by mile 8 in the 100, he was like, bitch, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, he was ready for a nap, and I was like, we can't stop. We still got 2 miles. So I carried Gallup, and I think that was okay. We were friends that week. Like we were talking, we were goofing around, but just in that one hike, when it comes from like, okay, my ego is gonna show, and then I'm gonna like full out lay my heart like on the table for you, and then show you that like, yeah, I'm a dog person. Like even if like no matter what, like I will carry your dog 2 miles. There was just something about that day that was just like we showed our commitment and our values, and there was just kind of like it sealed the deal in just a hike.
I think we were probably like halfway through the hike when you told me that you were gay, and like I remember you saying it, and my response was okay.
Yeah, I wanted more. I was like, what?
And you were like, you said to me, you were like, what?
And
like, like you, and then you opened up to me, and like that's when you told me your story and what you were going through. And like, I knew going into XMO, Extreme Mobility Games, that it was like a religious week.
Yeah.
I was not religious. So I was just like, listen, I just want to learn to surf, to say fuck you to this guy, Matthew on Tinder, who told me I couldn't. That's
fuck
why
you,
I'm
Matt from Tinder.
That's why I'm here.
And why we're friends. So thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Matthew. But like I knew it was religious, and I was going anyways because I didn't have to pay, and I got to learn how to surf for a week for free in California.
It was right after VidCon.
Right after VidCon, so I was already in like literally the day my first ever VidCon ended was the day XMO began, an hour away from each other.
Yeah.
And VidCon paid for me to fly out, so like my tickets were covered by VidCon. XMO is free for participants.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, of course I'm going to stay and get to learn how to surf. And it was 6 weeks after Matthew from Tinder told me he couldn't date me because I couldn't surf.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, bet. Like game
meant
on.
to be.
It was like so, like the universe just handed this opportunity to us.
Yeah.
And so I remember you saying that, and like I was just like, okay. And then you opened up and you were like, I'm going to be honest, like your reaction to just say, or my reaction to you was so foreign to you. And you were like, you're the first person I've come out to that was literally just okay with it. Like that didn't have follow-up questions. That wasn't like upset. And I was just like, well, why would I be? Like, that's just who you are.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for you, it was I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we have talked about it many times. So hopefully I'm not overstepping here. But, like, I think for you, it was a big moment because it was, like, the first time you realized that not everybody was going to treat you like a pariah.
Yeah.
Not everybody was going to think that you being gay was the end of the world or was this huge deal. Like, that there is a world out there for you where you would just be accepted.
Yeah.
And that did exist for you as a possibility to find that safe space of acceptance and community and love.
Totally.
And that you could rebuild your life as a proud, out, confident gay man and still have love and friendship and community outside of church.
Yeah, totally. Like the divine timing of like literally both you and Andrew having that same perspective. Andrew, not obviously he's gay, so like he doesn't, but his family, how they responded to him and how that impacted the baggage that he carries. You know, like when Andrew's my husband. Sorry, everybody. When my husband came out to his family, he was in college, so he's a late bloomer. But it was like literally.
Wait, he didn't come out till college?
Till college, yeah.
Okay.
But it was also like
nobody was.
No one was surprised. Everybody knew, but he still felt the need to send an email. He actually sent an email to everybody. CC mom, CC dad.
We were talking about this before the pod. Like, you are very straight passing. Like, if you want to be, you can be very straight passing, which probably comes from the years of being in the closet. Yeah. Andrew, as we both said, like, he just has the voice. Like, he just has the mannerisms. So I'm surprised it took so long.
He was born gay.
He was.
He was born
Truly.
that way.
He was born
Yes, very, very. Not a bone in that
a
wrist.
relaxed
It's
wrist, friends.
very, very ligament, no bones, just very floppy. But like how he responds to all sorts of homophobia. First of all, he didn't get rejected by church. He didn't get fired by his job. His parents didn't make it difficult for him. His grandparents didn't make it difficult for him. That's all that I knew how to relate to, was just like that one narrative. And so I assumed that was all that I had to talk about, was just that. You were the first one that kind of gave me the exposure to being like, yeah, I have a lot of gay friends, and like it's just not a big deal. And I was just like, well, that's refreshing. Would love to meet them. But when Andrew kind of came with that same firsthand experience where he's like, yeah, no, like I didn't have rejection, and therefore I don't feel the need to talk about this for 2 hours on a podcast. I don't feel the need to talk to this with my therapist. This is not impacting me. He didn't have a lot of the same emotional burdens that, even though as much as I feel like I've had control over the situation and tried to navigate it as best as I could, just to see how free he was from like some of the baggage and some of like what had been weighing me down was liberating to my own soul, because I realized what was really weighing me down was how much I was listening to those people, and I think there's a fine line between giving audience to them and giving them grace and letting them grow, but then listening to them and allowing their words to actually take a foothold in your brain. And all of their reactions that I let them, and like I said, you should give your family space to grieve the loss of an idea that they always had. And I know that's a tough thing to come to like recognition within yourself, because like they also don't even realize what they're gaining yet. Yes, they might be grieving the idea of something they've never known, like their straight version of their son, but they also, by grieving, aren't rejoicing in this new reality that they're kind of ignoring, So I don't know. I just felt like Andrew and you both kind of opened up my eyes to like, you don't have to give such a foothold to the negativity. Yes, like I was so dead set on pushing back against it, because I felt like the longer that I could put up with it, the longer that I could sit there, the more that my presence would help them in the long term. And it did, but it did come at like an emotional detriment. And that's why I try to tell people, like, you can only give enough grace as you're able to kind of like build yourself back up and build some protections up against yourself. Because if you're impressionable, like if you are easily influenced by what people think about you and judgment from others, coming out's a really tough thing. But once you free yourself from that, like coming out is a superpower that I wish straight people could do, because like everybody could have that opportunity of like detaching yourself from the opinions of others. But when you're gay and raised in that sort of homophobic environment, you have no choice but to either wrestle with this your entire life and to feel like a less than person, or just to not give their words the weight that they want them to. And doesn't mean cut them out of your life, but like you get to choose what to give those words like the weight. And so when you have people that come into your life, that was just like such a breath of fresh air. Not only because like you were that perspective, but Andrew was like the response to that perspective, right? Like, and you just got to see the correlation.
He was like the living embodiment.
Yeah, like, oh, you don't actually have to struggle with trauma if you don't respond to people this way. Yeah. But even just secondhand being able to tap into that reality helped me realize that, like, I get to choose that. I get to choose whether to perpetuate this feeling of loss and sadness and rejection for the rest of my life, or I can be loved and I can be free and I can be who I am. And it wasn't even me or my faith that gave me that idea. And I do believe that, like, because of my faith, because of what I believe, yeah, that is what we should all feel free. Like, none of us are better or worse than the others, like, if you really do believe that. But the person that inspired me the most and really changed my life was just another friend in West Hollywood that was just, we were out on the town, and he was one of those people that I looked to because he didn't have any sort of family support. Like, his family rejected him. And like, I would always talk about my examples, like, like, don't give up on him, like, don't, like, you just have to like keep, and his perspective, combined with like you, Andrew, and all these other people that spoke into my life, but like just the freedom of not caring what people think, to liberate yourself from that. And I know there's a lot of that like in the VI and the blind community, like the stigma of, being, associated with looking blind or being blind or acting blind. For whatever reason, I see it in a lot of the community apprehension to get plugged into services because they don't want to get associated with the community. And that's where Exmo, Extreme Mobility, is kind of like this outlier on the services where we pick up people that like they don't want to go to the Braille Institutes. They don't want to go to these other organizations that feel like they lump them in with a group of people that they don't feel like are their peers. They don't get, and it's
their internalized ableism of like, not
totally
wanting to like lean in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but having to own like the judgment free, like you can try to force judgment free on other people and to say stop judging people. Good luck. Like, and I would love to do that, but like we live in a society of people that like they're all going to do whatever the hell they want, and I try to use words to encourage people to choose love, choose kindness, but free will, and people are still going to do that. What you can control is what voices you listen to, whether you're talking about listening to the ableist voices in society or listening to the homophobic voices in your family. Like you really get to embody that sense of freedom and independence by which voices like you give that kind of weight to,
Yeah. I remember when we met, that week that we met, your family was very much like, I think she's the one. I think she'll turn him.
Yeah.
Like, I think they were still coming to terms with the fact that you'd properly just come out as like, no, I actually am gay.
Yep.
Like I did the gay, did the bi, back to gay again. I am gay. I'm staying here. And they saw you and I together and like, but maybe he's bi after all. And like really what they were seeing was I fully accepted you.
Yeah. And they're seeing me be happy.
And, if they were listening to the conversations we were having, I was like helping. I was, if anything, like opening the curtain to the gay world.
Yeah.
I was like,
there's more out there. There's more out there.
Let me take you to get your first pair of heels.
Yes.
Like I was like, I was pushing you further in that direction.
You did though. You actually did.
And what they were seeing was that again, like externally from 30 feet away when they can't hear.
Oh, he
we're
loves
laughing
her. He loves
and
her.
Because you felt accepted and you felt safe. And I think for the first many years of our friendship, like anytime we'd go out, people would assume we were together because again, you were very straight passing.
Yeah.
And we have this chemistry about us that I think people look at and think like romance, but what they're seeing is soulmate.
Yeah.
Like that is, they see us and they see that we are soulmates.
Yeah.
And soulmates don't have to be romantic.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so special to have a platonic soulmate.
Yeah.
And like it did, like meeting you and developing our friendship, like did feel in many ways. Hi, my love.
He said
You're
you said
a platonic
soulmate. He said you said soulmate. I'm here.
Yes.
Forget about me.
Your real soulmate has arrived. He says, Mummy, I'm soulmate.
Yeah.
You are my soulmate. Your platonic soulmate. That's right, the baby boy.
I mean, I don't know if it was the stage or the age or the season of our life or what it was, but it was just the timing, like, of where we were at. Like, it was, there's nobody else that I wish would have come into my life or would have been a better fit to, like, help me through a stage that, like, only you, like, you didn't know me. You only knew bits of my story, but you knew your experience and what you could try to do to, like, help somebody that wasn't even necessarily a full friend yet, but, like, it just, I hope everybody gets an opportunity to find a friend that you can grow with over a decade, because, like, we've had periods of being able to see each other daily, every other day through the pandemic, shutdown buddies. I was like,
we were together.
It was all the time.
When the pandemic, like when everything closed in LA, we were literally together.
Oh, we were out clubbing the night that things shut down. I forgot about that.
Did a lot of shots of vodka.
Yeah.
Danced at Tom Tom.
Yep.
West Hollywood.
And then the next
we were on
day,
the rooftop of the one hotel.
Yep. Isn't that for Casey's birthday?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Fun night.
But it's like we woke up the next day and like everything shut down. It's like, well, wasn't last night.
We had a
shut
good
it down.
time. We went out and had a good time.
But like it went from, friends that we're experiencing life with and doing things. And I love that season because like that was very much like it was normal. It was like we're living our lives and being able to know, like, have these moments of being able to look back at where we started and why it was so meaningful and celebrate, like, not just being alive 10 years later, but like what we have each been able to do, like in the lives that we're living. It's not just about you and I, and this is incredible, but like I just hope that other people, life is not meant to like be like walked alone. Like you want to celebrate things, and it's amazing to have like a relationship with somebody, like a significant other, to do that with. But like, you know how excited I am that you have that, like that you are literally like wearing a rock on your finger, and
You've seen me through many a bad date.
I have to just say this once. Molly, and I will always never ever forget this. She gave up. She said, I am done. No more boys. I'm gonna be single. And she meant it. And she said it before, but this time she meant it. She said, I have done too many. Like, this is just too exhausting. I think I am meant to be on my own. We were in Palm Springs enjoying this nice little best friend weekend. And
literally for my birthday, like 2 weeks before I met my now husband.
And part of me was just like so sad. I'm like, she cannot just be giving up. But I told her, I'm like, Molly, most of the time, it's when you're looking for that person, you're overlooking most people. What you have to do is stop looking, just focus on yourself, be the person that you want to be, and that person's going to come and find you.
And I was like, I don't want them to. I don't want them to.
And she has such a hard time telling me, Bradon, you're right. I don't think she's ever said that, but I don't think you even have said that yet. But
yeah, because you and everybody says that. It's not your wisdom. It's a stupid cliche, and I'm living proof that sometimes it's right.
Sometimes.
But I think I feel like what I saw in you when we met was like somebody struggling to accept themselves. Yeah. And I had walked that path with my blindness. And I was like on the tail end of my coming to fully accept who I was, my journey with that I was like, I just want to like, I see so much beauty in this human. Like I see what an incredible person this human is. And I hate that they've been taught to hate themselves. Like I hate that they feel like every time they come out, they're going to lose people or it's going to be a big drama. Like I wanted to like help you through your journey of acceptance the way there was people that helped me on my journey. And, I never had anybody within the disability community really help me on my journey. And so I knew that it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody from within that can help. It's just people who want to understand. And I feel like I have definitely seen you come full circle from like being up next to you on your wedding day on the altar from like where we were that day when you're like, I know you're in love with me, but I'm gay, and expecting me to be like, what? I've seen
run away in tears. No, not gay.
I've seen every version of you in between, and I think one of those versions was the version who did go like extreme into the gay lifestyle of like being in West Hollywood, the gayborhood, and going to the gay clubs. And, you helped me put a $1 bill down a gay man's pants.
I do it again. That's just a Tuesday. No, but I mean, it's absolutely true. And again, it wasn't fake. It was who I was at the time. And I still love a good go-go dancer action, love drag shows, love everything. But where I live is not Los Angeles, where like the gay scene is not like we have it out here. So like,
if anything, you're in like.
Let's not talk about it.
Let's not talk. We're not gonna. Just think of the opposite. Just think of the opposite. What you could be in. But I think it's for a lot of us learning to accept ourselves. Like that is what the journey looks like. Is like you have to explore every extreme to find where your home within that community is. Yeah. Like. You had been raised in such an extreme one direction that you had to go all the way the other way that had been so forbidden.
Yeah.
To find that equilibrium for yourself. And it's so beautiful to see you have that.
One thing that I always felt, and no one talks about this because it's really niche in like the Christian community and blind and visually impaired people that go to church, but like we absolutely walk a very similar path with that like niche segment. It's like people in the church feel like, the solution to being gay is prayer. The solution to being blind is prayer.
It's prayer for healing.
And it's like this commonality of like, God didn't make you this way. Sin made you this way. And who can fix you is God. And let me, because I can channel God, lay hands and pray on you.
Well, and that's the person you worked for.
Was that.
That's what they claimed, is that they could heal your disability and heal you of gayness.
Yeah. And it's hugely why I have a hard time stepping back into organized religion now. And I have a lot of great friends that are pastors that they're doing it right. Like there's churches and there's people and organizations that are out there that are doing it well to include people of all marginalized communities that are not getting wrapped up into this like partisan culture that is so anti what the church should have been. So I'm not trying to just paint all organized religion as bad, but like enough
You're
said.
allowed
Can
to
we
have had
scream?
your
Can we scream?
listen, you're allowed to have had your lived experience and
Yeah.
to hold an opinion because of that lived experience, and like nobody can judge you for that, and that's why these conversations I think need to exist,
Yeah.
is to say like we can all have different lived experiences that provide different takeaways and different, perspectives, but we can only learn and grow and understand if we are willing to listen to somebody else's lived experience that formed their perspective. You have come so far with your family. Like your parents walked you down the aisle. Where was that pivot? How did that pivot happen from trying to ship you off to date Miss Idaho to walking you down the aisle at your wedding to now co-owning a business with your parents?
Yeah. That's a great question. 'Cause like in my head, like I thought it was going to be quick. It would be a switch. It would be something I would say, a book that I would give them, and I would win their support. And the reality was it was slow, arduous, and like felt endless at times. Cause it's like, mind you, I was a more gracious person. I don't even know what the end result was that I was getting. I was okay with my parents being mildly homophobic and rejecting me. So what would I be okay as like an end result? I just knew I wanted to keep pushing them. What I wasn't okay with though was this man that like betrayed my family's nonprofit, that hurt me, that he's my former boss. Even after all of that, and he cut ties with the nonprofit and me, he remained friends with my dad, and my dad remained friends with him. And I couldn't convey enough times or even begin to understand why my dad would continue to do that. Like I would tell him how much it hurt me because like um I knew they were talking about me. I knew that my old boss was trying to convince my dad that like I'm not actually gay. He's just confused because he was assaulted, that he was abused. And that was literally my boss told that to me. So I knew that the closer that my dad got with my old boss, the more that I was going to lose all of the progress that I made on my dad. So like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I don't even know. But like that was after I came out, and I went and I tried to tell my story. What I mean by tell my story, because my story keeps unfolding and I'm telling it now, but I wanted to talk about the guy that let me go, that told me he didn't want me working for him. And when I went to tell that story, the publication that I was going to get it published in reached out to my family to source the information because they have to fact check information and make sure it's legit. And in a small family-run nonprofit like ours, the only volunteer staff there were that could vouch for whether this person still did or didn't donate was one of my parents. And they reached out to my dad, and he lied to them about whether or not this did or didn't happen. And he said that this guy still donates to our nonprofit and he's still a supporter. In other words, made me look like the liar to this publication just so that we could keep calm in our family life and to keep some sort of normalcy and not keep the peace and not throw this guy under the rug or whatever, or the bus. But he didn't care about me. My dad didn't. He cared about what people thought. He didn't care about me because I was the one trying to feel validated and hear and help people feel less alone that were caught in these situations where they're having to choose between themselves and their true identity or a job. I wanted to share that story, especially when you add the layers of emotion and passion to it. Like, and then when I had my own dad say, I'm not going to let you do it, and I'm willing to lie to keep it from coming out. It definitely wasn't that moment. Let me tell you that was not what brought us close or fixed it. But I knew that like until I got my dad to see that what he was doing was harmful, I couldn't fix the relationship with my dad. So I could do everything I could to try to help them see my identity as equal, as love, but that meant nothing to me emotionally if my dad continued to have this relationship with the guy that treated me in that way. And and not only that, I didn't stand in my way to like even tell my story. So until I actually was successful in that endeavor, I failed the first time and I thought I would never have the chance again because people in the media world, if you get caught not being able to source a story, do you think that they're going to take you for an honest, writer?
Source, yeah.
Yeah, source? No. So I had to really come, with a lot of explaining to do. And luckily, people that are in our community, they kind of know that, like, yeah, I explained that he reached out to my homophobic dad and he just didn't want to have the story come out. And if you reached out to my mom, she'd probably say totally different tale. And they believed me and they knew that, like, that's probably exactly what happened was his dad didn't want the story to come out. And so he just lied. And so that's what they did. They reached out to my mom and she said the truth and the story came out. My former boss reached out to my dad and um, threatened a lawsuit to me in the publication. And my dad finally saw him for who he was. And my dad was always thinking that, like, he actually was a friend of this guy and not just a tool and not just a pawn. But my dad finally saw that he's just used whenever it's convenient. And in this circumstance, he was used to carry a message because my old boss had no other way to get a hold of me. I changed my number. He couldn't, but to convey a threat, he used my dad to keep me quiet and ultimately say if I ever talk about it by name or, anything. And hence why we're not naming the person. But if you
Yes.
want to look him up, do it. You won't get in trouble. But I couldn't move on until this was behind me. And I felt like that was still lingering because, like, I felt like I couldn't talk about it. And even still till this day, like, I finally did get it out there. It got shared. And the best thing of all of that was it had a year of getting circulated around the internet, and it, news, like top stories like that, they go to every corner.
Yeah.
So I got what I was trying to do. The world knew this guy for what he was, and there were consequences for his actions. And I'm happy and sad about that at the same time. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. I've had to sit with the reality that I hurt a man that I used to care about deeply in response because he hurt me. And I hurt his career. And I still care about him. Throughout all of this, I feel for him. And it sucks. That's all that I can say is just the reality of where it ended up. It makes me feel good because I did what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was tell my story. The reality was it hurt having to do that and hurt somebody that hurt me. But he eventually was able to get it taken down because lawsuits and threats and media outlets and publications and businesses, once they get the clicks and ad revenue, it's easier for them to remove something and avoid the lawsuit. And so I had to ask this question, well, what does telling your story mean? Is it writing it down and keeping it out there for it to stay forever? Or is it this feeling of something more internal and eternal? And that's kind of where I've left it. It's like I still talk about it. Obviously, I'm talking about it now, but my mission in life was no longer to, like, that's not my story. That's my past. My story is now ahead of me. And the best thing that happened, to answer your question of, when was that? When did they come full circle? It was when that second article came out and my boss threatened my dad or threatened me through my dad. And my dad chose to end the friendship with him at that point. I finally got my dad back and he apologized. It was the first time he apologized to me about this whole thing. And it's hard for my dad to apologize. So I remember it and I take it to heart. And I told him really honestly, like, this is years too late. And so much of the hurt is sealed in there, but, like, know that my love and, like, forgiveness is there, as well as the hurt, and that's real. Like, people need to be honest. Like, forgiveness does not remove the hurt, but I did not want my dad to feel like I'm angry at him. I wasn't, but I finally got to have him back. Like, I finally knew, like, he saw me, he saw the situation, and he chose me. He stopped choosing that guy. And it's been all gravy since then. He's been, like, loving on my husband, Andrew, probably more than me.
I mean,
I'm
you
like,
guys lived with them at one point, which, like, I would have never thought that you would get to a point with your family when we first met that, like, you and your boyfriend, future husband, would live in your parents' house for a few years, and you did happily. And, like, I I am not somebody who cries at a wedding speech. My God, I was crying when your dad gave his wedding speech because I know
Yeah.
where he used to be.
Yeah.
I know where your relationship used to be.
Yeah.
And to hear him so proudly and your mother so proudly speaking about you and your husband on your
Yeah.
wedding day and how truly happy I believe they were for you that day,
Yeah.
it was just like so beautiful and so full circle.
Yeah.
And I so respect and appreciate you sharing your
Mm.
past because I know that it's not your everything today. It's not like something that you're actively
I'm so glad
doing,
you
but
asked. You asked such great questions about it. Like, I don't talk about it often, and I really appreciate that your questions were like getting to the point of what I feel like my story really is starting to mean, not only to me, but I hope to other people, which is it unfolds slowly. Like, and like you, seeing my dad's speech at the wedding and talking about his journey, it's like, man, I would love for everybody's journeys just to be unnecessary. I would love for us all just to arrive at the destination.
mm,
That would be easy. That might not be realistic though. And so if you are a willing participant in a family that's going through this or a community that's going through this, just being willing to like not give up, protect yourself first and foremost.
yeah.
Like, do not put yourself in compromising situations, but like, don't give up on people just because they're not where you want them to be. Like, give them another chance, give them grace, and keep showing up.
We're all just people who are here for the first time.
Yeah,
We're
figuring it
all
out.
just trying to figure it out,
Yeah,
and we can't condemn other people's paths.
yeah,
I mean, certain people we can.
yeah.
Some people
Some people deserve it.
deserve
Yeah.
it, but most don't. Um, what is what is your future? What is your story today? What do you want people to know that I haven't asked about?
Oh, you mentioned a little bit about like, things have gotten so far in the other direction that like I'm now working with my family. We've always worked loosely together with the nonprofit, but I am so excited to be giving more time and energy to my family, and not just my family, but like the things that we all care about together. And that means these opportunities that we're creating, like extreme mobility camps, has been something that they have done for over 45 years, and that I know they're in their 60s now. And if we don't figure out a plan to keep it going without them, without getting staff or some sort of volunteer base that'll keep it going for free, like it won't exist for future generations to come. And I don't want to let that happen. And so there's a certain window in my life to show up. And this is a very real thing as I've been trying to sort out my next steps. And my parents at the same time, they dreamt up a timeline for, actually making this happen. They had this dream of being able to have a headquarters somewhere, a facility to like host camps of their very own. And um, they finally realized that like maybe it's best to not purchase that facility through the nonprofit, but maybe to let them provide that facility to the
Mm.
nonprofit. So kind of really tweaking the vision that they had always had, and um, circumstances in my life kind of aligned with the vision that they had, to where I'm like, you know what you're doing sounds a lot better than what I'm currently doing, and I'm all in. And I've always been all in on the nonprofit, but like I have a job, I got to show up and make money and take care of my bills. And it's been a period to just like get that like going to where I can commit again to Exmo, which is my baby. Like that's what I want to like pursue. What my dream is in life is to make sure that is there to serve future
As long
communities.
as I've known you, that's been the dream
And
you're
it will,
working on.
and that's the thing. So it's still there, and I'm all in because I've yet again given up my income to where I can now have time to do it. Also pursuing a vision and a dream with my family on this ranch. It's like 150 acres in California, where we'll do summer and winter camp. We'll still have our camps in Colorado, but the primary purpose is to be like a working ranch where we're going to have retreats, and there'll be a wedding venue. And like my parents just want to
Ooh.
retire. Yeah, maybe. I wish I knew some people are getting hitched.
Mhm.
Might just be a dirt pad for the next time being, but eventually it'll be a wedding venue. But it's a project on top of a project. 'Cause the big project that we care about is the nonprofit, but then now we have 150 acres to try to work on to build a dream. And I can't tell you how excited I am to, like, my parents are in their 60s. This is going to be an incredible decade to be able to just spend time. Another thing that you and I have in common is just like our love for our parents. Like, our parents are like our best friends. And it might sound like some of you might get the ick by that, and some of you might be like, I know what you mean. And if you know what we mean, you're lucky.
It's very special.
You're very lucky. I would do anything to work with my family and to be with them. And given the conversation we just had, you guys are probably like, what? But we're
That's what's so
working.
beautiful and so amazing.
I'm in my gay ranchers era. We have cows, and I wear boots, and I have a truck. That's my future. Don't know for how long, but we're calling it the gay cowboy era, and I'm here for it.
Now it's time for the part of the show where I ask you an awkward question,
Oh,
something
God.
everyone might want to know but is too afraid to ask. So, Bradon, top, bottom, or verse? No.
I should have maybe watched a few episodes to know this. That's not the question, right?
No.
Okay, I was like,
I mean, I'm sure there is one viewer out there who's like,
I'm actually, no. Can I be a top, bottom, and verse? D, all of the above. Yes.
Just yes. It's not an easy time to be a minority in this country.
Yeah.
It's not an easy time to be any kind of queer. What would you say to the people in this country right now who are advocating against your community's rights? The people who don't believe that you should have the right to have children, even though you have to spend $200,000 and years of work to get one. What would you say to the people who don't believe that trans people or drag queens should be able to read to children?
Yeah.
What would you say to the people who don't believe that there should be any kind of mention of the LGBTQ spectrum in schools because it's turning children?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I wish I would just tell them what I would really think, which is, like, knock it off, shut the fuck up, get out of town. But I know that wouldn't, like, accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish in that conversation, right? Which is to try to have these type of bridge moments like what we're having now. It's like if you sit down long enough and find those inroads in a conversation, maybe they might hear you. One of the approaches that I do is rather than, like, talking to somebody, just like how you've been doing, you've been asking questions, like really thoughtful questions to get me thinking. What would I say? Like, I would poke holes in their logic at every single chance by asking them questions. Simply why? Like, why do you even care about parents that consent to having their kids go through gender affirming care? Why is that your problem? That it's the parents and the doctors and the child's concern, not yours, not your politician. You could say that in part, right? That's what we believe, but ask them, why do they care? And they're going to give you an answer that's probably wild. And they're going to say, oh, because Jesus made two genders and kids are getting mutilated. But make them tell you their logic. And then rather than throw it right back at them, as ridiculous as that might sound, to kind of give them a stage to give a voice to the rationale behind those beliefs, make them say it. Like, make them tell you why they think the way that they think, and try to get them to re-examine those foundational beliefs that create those principles. And I do genuinely think that, like, that's the only way. If we keep getting in this approach of, like, talking at each other and telling people, don't think this way because X, Y, and Z, they're just already thinking, I disagree, and let me try to think of how to respond.
You have to lead the horse to
always
water.
lead.
You have to let them come to the conclusion yourself.
Yeah. And they know, and I think a lot of people are torn up knowing that, like, their belief systems and faith systems they're not consistent with how our country is currently treating marginalized people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know that, and they know that, like, they have to either ignore that and just be ignorant to the fact that they are not acting as their beliefs say, or, try to have a re-examining of the priorities that they have for these things. And I would love for people to, I would love for them all to change their beliefs, but I'm out here to change behaviors, not change beliefs. Like, be homophobic. Just stay out of my fucking way. Like that's not my life. Like literally, I
Honestly, like I feel the same about fake
yeah.
service dogs. I've gotten to a point where I'm like, bring your fake service dog. Just let it be well behaved.
Yes.
Like as long as it acts like a real
Oh,
one, I don't actually care.
I hate
just
that
hate people
though.
whose dogs get in my way.
Yeah. I just I I hate people's
Entitlement.
entitlement, but I hate people's anytime like closed-minded way of thinking.
Mhm.
I think it all just boils back down to the same thing. It's like you're either uneducated, you're stubborn, you refuse to listen, but that's a common thing. And with information not being so reliable right now, it's like you can go on social media and find something, you can watch one news network and find something. It's not hard to just create an opinion and just keep it and keep to yourself. What I encourage people to do, like to challenge those people, um, I don't want to say don't get into arguments or debates because sometimes those are fitting. But I've seen in my life where you really start to see the needle move, where you start to see people change, is when you slow down the conversation enough to where you each can be heard.
Mhm.
Your tone is mellow. You're having a conversation, and ask them questions. Get them
Yes.
thinking, and then whenever you can plug a logical thing to be like, "Is that really what you think Jesus would do?" Or "Do you really think that that matters?" Or "Is that true?"
I think
It's
genuinely trying to learn their perspective makes them more open to genuinely wanting to understand
yeah,
yours.
yeah,
And like I completely agree. Like that's how I try to go about my form of advocacy
yeah.
is not in this like I'm going to yell my point to you because then what you find is you remain in the echo chamber.
Mm,
People don't learn when you yell at them.
yep.
People learn when you talk to
Yeah.
them and have conversation. And I think what's hopeful is you grew up for the majority of your life in a circle with the same people who would vote against you
Mhm.
and who would be against your community, and you've seen them change,
Mhm.
which means it is possible with the exposure, with time, with conversation. Um, it's possible, and that gives me hope in the midst of what can feel really dark at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the I have a lot of hope for, seeing those same things, like seeing people that have changed, and hope also in that the end destination that I think we should all be looking for is not groupthink of society for us all to sit in one accord and agree on an issue, because we never will.
No.
What I hope to do in the same way that we've all found inroads and ways to relate and build bridges, whether it's through our families because we have to find a way to keep things, familiar with them, but you have more stuff in common with people than we have that sets us apart.
Yeah.
And why, as humans and in society, we choose to focus on the issues that keep us feeling more isolated or in our echo chambers or only understood by a certain portion of the population. Um, I just strongly think that we can try to, I don't know, color outside the lines and bleed into each other's communities a little bit by embracing the differences,
Mhm.
not accepting, embracing. I will never, even still, my dad, as great as he is, still voted a way that really hurt me and hurt my community, and like I still have these conversations all the time. But does that change the progress that my dad has made in his own growth, and evolving? No, but what
And hopefully next time he's evolved even further and votes differently,
and
you
and
know?
and we keep talking about it, but how we talk about it is finding those things like what do we agree on in this moment? And what can we see that we can talk about? And if it's a disagreement and we can have that same sort of energy that we talk about our agreements on, then all is game. We can talk about any of it. But that's how we've done it within my family, where it's like we don't agree, even still till this day, in ways that like it can hurt me. But I don't let it, because again, judgment and opinions of others, yes, it hurts me that my own parents might not think exactly the same way that I do. I've never thought once that they might be hurt because I don't think how they do. And
Right.
that's how humans are. It's like I don't care. So um I just encourage people to keep finding those inroads and those things that you could build bridges with, that you have in
Keep having
common.
conversation.
Yeah. And if it's somebody that is making you feel unsafe, making you feel less than, or not seen as the precious human that you are, you always have the option to walk away with your head held high. But don't let the fear of those interactions keep you from an entire group of people that's out there, because you might be the one that has the ability to communicate and change opinions, change the world. You just have to be willing to share and be real with yourself, whether that means I'm going to be gay and go to church, or whether that means be gay and never go to church, or be gay and be gay. You know, it's just, you have to own your moment.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So tell me, we started by asking who is Bradon, but tell me now, what is it really like to be Bradon every day?
Being Bradon every day is a little chaos. It's like ADHD and the sky is falling, but in the best ways. It's like I have so much energy and excitement to do things, in part because for the last decade, going through, and you've seen me circle the drain so much the last decade, whether it's the depression drain, the anxiety drain, the financial struggles drain, trying to get I've struggled because of all of this. And so finally being in a state of my life where I'm like, I'm good. Like, things are good. And I look around, I'm like, all right, like, things are still good. And like, not on a sinking boat. I've been trying to run as fast as I can and use that to like just go. And how that makes me feel sometimes is exhausted. And I don't know how much this is you, but somebody asked me, who they come from a really different family environment, like struggled a lot economically. And I come from like a lot of privilege, not just because like I'm a cisgendered white dude, but like my family, they never split up. My dad always did pretty well. And so I have had this like financial support that has been privileged to send me through school, whatever. She hasn't had that, and has a totally different relationship to work and to money than we have, where she feels, because she's already overcome a lot of the generational cyclical poverty that she was from, she's left home. She's already beaten a lot of the challenges that were against her. She comes into our environment where we see all this like privilege and things like working, and we still are like unsatisfied and not happy. That's what she sees. She sees unsatisfied. And how I tried to present it to her is like, I'm not discontent. I am happy. Like I'm the word that I use is like, I am content, but I'm like passionate. Like you want more. Like, and you know this because I've seen this for you. Like, you've made it, Mal. Like you've done, at any point in our lives, we get to say like, we made it. Like, we've done it. Because why? Because we're not being freaking bombed right now. Like, and because we live in a place that like is safe and allows us to make content and be free and use our like, we are okay. And if we choose to wake up not feeling content and choosing to feel like we're in chaos, that's on us. So how does Bradon feel when he wakes up? Well, he wakes up feeling like the world's falling apart, like his dreams are all on his shoulders and he has to run as fast as he can to make it happen. But he wrestles with himself enough to feel content because he knows that everything is good and he has everything he needs. And being content is the best place to start from, especially if you're reaching for more. You know, don't reach for more because you're not content. Make sure if you're reaching for more in life, it comes from a place of like deep contentment and happiness, and you'll go so much further. So, you know, I don't have two words for anything, Molly, and there's not, but
if there's anybody who can talk more than me, it's my best friend.
Oh, we are quite the pair.
Well, I love you so much.
I love
am so
you.
proud of you. I'm so grateful you walked into my life, and the universe put you in my life for a reason. And I am going to leave Extreme Mobility Games nonprofit linked below in case there's any blind people who want to learn about it and get involved and experience it. I highly recommend it. Or if there's anybody who wants to donate and support the incredible work they do to support blind people in being able to enjoy adaptive athletics for free and be involved in community. And I will have any other info that Bradon wants me to share linked below
All
as
of it.
well.
Yeah.
All of it. Thank you for everybody supporting this podcast. Please make sure you're following over on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. It really helps the show out. Thank you so much. Let's go drink margaritas and get tipsy.
But first, make sure to subscribe to her Patreon if you have not.
Oh,
you
look
have
at you.
To. What? I mean, come on. If you're not, you need to be a part of it.
It helps make shows like this happen because this is an entirely self-funded podcast for the time being. So shout out to my patrons because you do really support projects like this and allowing me to follow my dreams and have what I think are really important conversations.
You
So
hear
thank
that?
you.
You did this.
You did
You did this,
this.
Bees.
You did this. And now you know what it's really like.